Welcome to Fandom Power.
Hey, welcome back to Fandom Power presents The Fandalorian. This week, it's Chapter 13, and once again, I'm joined by producer Andy.
Hello.
And Hank out in Halifax.
Boyos.
Good morning, gentlemen. So, Chapter 13, The Jedi, this one, written and directed by Dave Filoni, has a total runtime of 47 minutes with the recap, so you're probably looking at 45 without. And our synopsis today is the Mandalorian journeys to a world ruled by a cruel magistrate who has made a powerful enemy. So, gentlemen, before we start breaking down the episode, any initial thoughts?
Oh my goodness. Without giving anything away early, this episode was the first one where I've been saying every week I nearly worked the neighbors.
Yeah.
There was a part at the end that we'll get to where I literally stood up out of my chair and screamed with my hands above my head. And this episode almost brought me to tears. And I'm going to chalk that up to me watching it at 4 a.m. and being super, super tired still.
Yeah.
And so therefore very weak emotionally. But yeah, there's a moment in this episode where I nearly cried.
Oh, that's fantastic. What about you, Andy? Anything you got for sort of initial thoughts?
Loved it. From 2 minutes in, it's like, let's go.
Yeah, there's a punch there, and the pacing just it starts on a high note and maybe ends on a higher note.
Quite
really?
possibly, yeah.
Certainly, where emotional tensions are concerned.
There was a couple times I thought it would take a turn, but I was like, okay, no, all right.
Yeah.
If you don't like The Mandalorian after this episode, you should watch Picard.
I just want to remind everybody, do you guys remember last week when I had asked, do we think The Mandalorian is trying to redeem the sequel trilogy the same way the Clone Wars redeemed the prequels?
Yes.
Yes, I remember.
So my initial thoughts today are, I'm going to double down on that statement because I really think that's the direction that we're going. And I've got a few things when we get to the end of the show that I really want to, I'm going to go all meta on.
Well, certainly there's a trend of recontextualizing.
Yes.
So, and I don't think there's anything that's terribly wrong with the sequels that needs, redefining necessarily, but there are little stop gaps in the information that haven't been jumped into. And so that I feel like that's definitely, and especially the way they're operating from knowing the end game. And they've been doing that a lot. And then being able to cherry pick the things that they want to use to flesh out that end game. It's kind of it's like backwards chess. And it's really, really cool.
I mean, it's no surprise that the Mandalorian is continuing that trend of, especially what we saw in Rebels and to a lesser degree in Clone Wars, where the series is very happy, very content to pluck what I've always referred to as maybe some of the best elements of the Legends or the old EU and pull it forward and recanonize it maybe in a new, sometimes more exciting, sometimes less exciting, but definitely a new way that makes it accessible to new fans of the franchise.
No, absolutely. And it gives us a reason as people who even grew up to a certain degree with that EU stuff, reason to dip back into it. And I've read more about the Old Republic and the EU last night than I have in probably 10 years.
Yeah. I found myself doing the same thing as I was doing. So there was a few things I'm like, I'll make a note of that and I'll look it up after because I don't want to stop the show and interrupt the flow.
Right.
And then once I sat down to do it, I thought I actually thought I was done my show notes. And then there was a couple of things I'm like, oh yeah, I better look that up. And when I looked it up and it hit me, I'm like, oh my God. And suddenly I had another page and a half of notes. So
yeah, this one was, I was quite verbose.
Oh my God.
Quite verbose. Yeah. I have notes on paper on my computer and on my phone for this one.
Yeah, me too. And then I basically had to pull some stuff out of a Facebook Messenger chat that I was having with somebody else because it was like, wait a minute. Yep, I need to talk about that tomorrow. So. And
I have a level of intestinal fortitude I didn't know I possessed because I work with a very, very big Star Wars fan who's a really good friend of mine.
Yep.
And he hadn't seen it. And I don't know how I didn't say anything.
Not say anything.
At all. And so it was, it was almost like a fun game to play because it was like, I know something you don't know.
Yeah. And see, I'm that guy that, you know what, if you know it and you know, if you said to me, have you seen it yet? I would say no. And then you go like, well, then I won't say anything. I'd be like, yeah, you will. You're going to tell me everything because it's not going to change the way I watch it.
He was kind of like, don't say it. And I was like, you should see the screenshot of my phone. He's like, no, don't. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
I flashed him Ahsoka and he was like, no, you bastard. I know it. So that's not, everybody knew that was coming. So he wasn't.
Yeah. Lots of backlash. So just before we start breaking the episode down, the last couple of weeks I've been struggling with how to get our reach out a little bit more. And so what I've taken to doing is I've been doing a preview post sort of the day before.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last 3 weeks, I've been tacking on photos from the episode and putting them out the night before.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, I shared some photos last night in our preview post, and the backlash I received was pretty brutal on a couple of, I was called some nasty things. That being said, though, the most organic reach we've ever had on a Facebook post was last night.
That's awesome.
So
I was so into the episode and writing my notes that I didn't even check Facebook. So I'm not one of the interactors on that
no,
post.
no.
Check out what was so divisive after.
Well, you won't. So it was a photo. I posted a photo of Ahsoka in the photos that I had put out, and people were like, "Man, it's not even 24 hours." So and then some little colorful expletives were tossed at me. So after my initial kind of snicker, I'm like, okay, I'll take the picture of Ahsoka down. But I left the other 3 up.
Right.
There was nothing revealing about them other than, hey, these are some people you're going to see. But anyway, let's start breaking it down and see where the conversation goes. We finally make it to Caladan, and we open with a shot of Corvus, and you can see that it's like a low-lying cityscape, but it's veiled in this like fog, and it's kind of yellowy green, almost has like a noxious kind of
like a burned out forest.
Yeah, very much so.
Messed the place up.
I had my notes like pea green atmosphere.
Yeah.
In that initial shot, there's a factory in the background just pumping bilge like smoke.
I caught that the second time around. Yeah. I really wasn't aware of it. I saw there's some kind of starship lifting off in the background, and that's where I'm like, oh, shiny thing. So I totally missed the factory.
It's quite large too. It's larger than some of the towns and cities we've seen so far.
Yeah, and that's going to play into a point that I want to make later on. The whole starship thing, and the factory, that's important to know, because if you weren't looking and you missed the factory, you may not connect the dots.
That's right.
But I thought Corvus itself was really reminiscent, and it's kind of peppered throughout. There's a contrast here in the environment where you have this, I think I said it sort of pre-show to you last night, Hank, where I felt like the forest around Corvus was very much like the scene in Wonder Woman, the No Man's Land. Like it was this bombed out, burned, and even her private army, when you see them, they look very reminiscent of like First World War soldiers with gas masks on. Right?
Gas masks and the sort of rubber tunics over them. Yeah, I got that vibe for sure. I also got a strong vibe of a juxtaposition of the opening scene of The Rise of Skywalker, and you say, trying to recontextualize the way Kylo moves through that burnt out forest, a totally different palette with reds on whites, but more like brutal and very like, he's not hiding in the shadows. And in the opening scene, we sort of get that it's juxtaposed. It's like a different way of moving through a similar environment. And so I really got that vibe, like they were like inverted mirrors of one another. Yeah,
in a way they are.
Yeah.
And then so the inner city of Corvus itself, I got a real like, this could have been any ancient, East Asian civilization.
Certainly. And there was a lot of Ralph McQuarrie concepts, I think, that were used in Bespin.
Yeah, okay.
There's like that sort of domed with a little tear and the teardrop on top style of buildings.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny because I had a different take on that. I actually thought that I guess it's the temple, to me, was very reminiscent of the Bomar Monastery on Tatooine.
Oh, nice.
Like Jabba's palace.
Yeah, it's like sort of like a that aesthetic, like a pagoda.
Yeah. So, sprawling shot of the burned out forest. There's an alarm sounding, and then we have this group of soldiers who we've never seen these guys before with their 3/4 length coats and their gas masks are rushing towards the main gate, while the citizens of the town are like, they're ducking for cover and they're going indoors.
And it's super cool how, although we've never seen this before, it still looks so Star Wars.
Yeah,
And
I felt that way too.
and the way that people have attempted to make things look Star Wars that weren't Star Wars
Yeah.
before and have failed, there's an aesthetic that they've captured,
Yep.
and it's I love it. I love it. Everything looks exactly like it should.
I think hats off though to the production team on A New Hope, who really went out of their way to take real world objects and then adapt them to this science fantasy space opera setting. And to me, it feels like the producers of The Mandalorian are really, they're kind of leaning into that, and they're doing the same thing. Let's find real world objects that are period pieces that, with some greebles can actually fit the aesthetic that we're looking for. And I think they're doing it, again, better than certainly better than most of the prequel trilogy did.
Agreed. Necessity is the mother of invention. So,
for sure it is.
I agree that the budget isn't as tremendous as as certainly as the billions of dollars of the movie can be, but so they're and during COVID there's limitations there. So they're doing a tremendous amount. Tremendous.
I know we talked about it before, and I just want to mention it again. It would be really interesting at some point if the numbers are floating around out there. I would love to know the per episode cost on one of these, because again, for a television budget, I don't think you can find a better production value.
No, it's crazy good. It's crazy high. I mean, it seems like it's taking leaps in episodes too. I mean, this is certainly equivalent with any of the films we've seen on.
I would, yes, easily, easily,
seamlessly.
So there's an alarm going off, and it's a low. Talking about the disparity of technology, right? This low tech, literally like a giant tubular bell. And a dude with a mallet, and this is bong, 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 bong. And so from atop the settlement wall, more soldiers and their commander, who may or may not be a familiar face, are observing some blaster fire that's veiled by the pea soup fog. And Andy, you get a name for us?
Michael Biehn.
Oh my lord, Mr. Terminator himself, Kyle Reese, Michael Biehn.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Corporal Hicks.
I almost didn't recognize him, and I was looking up some like recent photographs of him, and I think it's because of the way that they've got his hair colored and the way that it's pulled back and kind of laid flat. It's just because at first I was like, oh, he's not aging very well, but then it's like, no,
I
he's
said
all
that
right.
too. I hope he doesn't hear me.
Yeah,
He looks like he's let himself go a little.
So from the fog, the camera shifts, and now we're kind of in close on these soldiers moving from the fog, and the show makes no attempt to conceal. Like, they put it right out there, probably within the first
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Twin intensely white lightsabers start cutting these guys down, and lo and behold, it's Ahsoka.
So good.
And her initial on-screen appearance, like, all the backlash I got last night, like, all kidding aside, like, come on, guys, like, what did you expect? Like, it's Rosario Dawson, and she looks exactly like you thought she would.
Exactly. Like, she looks exactly like all the fan art.
That's what I said.
Yeah, and it's like, who produced that fan art?
Yeah.
Somebody knew what was going on. I mean, it's pretty much empirical. She's orange. She looks like Rosario Dawson. She's got the tattoos in the right place.
That's right.
And the headset. So, but she's operating like a ninja. So she's even dressed like a ninja.
Yeah, very much so.
She's wearing tabi. If everybody knows what tabi are, they're the ninja shoes with the split toe.
Yep.
She's even wearing tabi, and she's wearing Bushido pants, similar to the stuff that Darth Maul wears in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Big and baggy, but tight at the knee and down. So it's very indicative of samurai or ninja. And then she's deflecting blaster bolts, and she's moving really, really well, a lot like Ahsoka. So the actress is starting to really capture, or not even starting, like right off the hop, she's capturing the movements that Ahsoka makes.
Yeah, very much so.
And this, for like disappearing, like
Fading.
into the fog and reappearing and disappearing.
Yes.
Like, such ninja stuff there for me. Just woo.
Yeah, I mean, you can't tell me that those lightsabers are not a big giveaway, right? I mean, if you've never seen Ahsoka, particularly if the only version of Ahsoka that you've ever seen was the Clone Wars, then you're familiar with her fighting with green and possibly blue lightsabers, and not her remade ones from Rebels, which are intensely white. I mean, it's like a fluorescent light tube, right?
It is, yeah.
So when you say like moving like a ninja, well, no wonder she keeps shutting them off, because she needs that. She has to take advantage of the concealment that the fog offers.
Oh, it's and the way she utilizes it, and then we get to see her use the Force.
Yes,
there's so much packed in that little scene.
In a couple of different ways too, right? I mean, I think the first one is the call back to Obi-Wan Kenobi, where she makes the sound to distract one of the guards, and they of course turn for it, and that gives her an opportunity to strike again.
Yeah.
And then the second time, she cuts down a guy, but through a tree.
Cleaves him in Twix.
Yeah, and the way that
and then
she
fires
does
the piece
it,
of the
yeah,
tree.
exactly. The section of the tree trunk is now loose, and she's able to like hurl that at another troop, and it's
I
just
love that
this.
when the tree falls back onto the stump.
Yes,
and it still fits.
And there's some hang time where it just kind of sits there.
Hang time, and then it falls like there's a beat, and then it falls in front of her, and it's just the one saber out, and the way the wind whips her cloak, dude.
Yeah,
dude, that was so amazing. Like, it looked like the cartoon but live action.
So I'm going to take this opportunity. This is where I want to touch on the first sort of like philosophical, emotional beat that I got from the show. And this is something that I'm going to talk about it now, because it essentially plays throughout the entire episode, right up until almost the end. I really feel like this version of Ahsoka is a version that we've never seen before. And while she is the same character, you have to remember that she's been gone for an indeterminate number of years. This Ahsoka, I feel, has seen some shit. She's brutal. She's calculating. This is not the optimistic, I don't want to say kid, because in Rebels she's an adult. But even in Rebels, she was way more optimistic than she was throughout the majority of this episode. And I think that's reflected in her style.
So I'm cut in two parts by like a tree in this. So I feel like so much has happened to her that not broken, but like she's gone through so much by this point that she's so disconnected from the Jedi, and that she has her own moral amplitude now, and she's not afraid to take lives. Before we saw her, and she would deflect blaster bolts.
That's right,
and knock
yeah.
people unconscious and throw them around with the Force, but now she's executing soldiers.
She was going through people like the prequel Jedi would go through droids.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
That's one of the thoughts I thought. Exactly. She was cutting these guys down like they were droids.
Yep.
Now, they're probably slavers. They're probably despicable.
Yep.
But she's not acting like a Jedi, to the point where, and I'm just going to jump a microsecond.
Yeah,
ahead,
go for it.
Where the woman we won't talk about her yet, but the woman addresses her. And I thought for sure when she said, "Show yourself, Jedi," that Ahsoka's first line was going to be, "I am no Jedi."
Yeah, you know what? I actually thought you had said that as well, Andy. And so a couple of people that knew that I was watching and reviewing had said the same thing. Like, I'm surprised she didn't say that.
So that's where the other side of my split tree comes in, because at no point does she correct anybody about her becoming a Jedi.
She does not.
In fact, the title of the episode is called The Jedi.
It is called The Jedi. And we're going to get to a point
she contemplates training the child.
Yes.
And I think that she's a Jedi again. And I think that in terms of, and by that I mean, without Jedi there as a corporate entity, like the Walmart of Jedi, the thing that she rejected the most is gone.
Yep.
And so that there's a vacuum there. And now she steps into that vacuum with what she believes a Jedi is and should always be. And therefore, I think she is a Jedi again.
I want you to hold on to that, because we're going to come back to that. I have a pretty in-depth section in my notes where I want to talk about why I also think that she is still a Jedi, but it may not line up with your impression perfectly, but that's going to be an interesting conversation.
Right.
So to go back to the unnamed character that we were talking about, at this point, we actually do flip over back to the wall, and now this woman, who we come to find out is the magistrate of the planet, she has now joined Michael Baine's character up on the wall, and she's carrying a cool looking spear, which is going to come into play throughout the episode. The remaining soldiers, they've lost sight of Ahsoka, and they try to flush her out to no avail as she descends on each one and methodically kills them. Yeah, so approaching the wall, the magistrate tells Ahsoka that she's been expecting her. So that should be, again, my first time watching it. I didn't really pick up on that. It's like, oh, like, does she know her already? Or has Ahsoka just been here harassing her for enough time that she's come to expect her?
So I had that thought too, because Bo-Katan knew where Ahsoka was,
Yeah.
and knew that Ahsoka would be there for a while.
Yeah.
Even able to tell him which city on which planet that she was on.
Right.
And some time passed because he did a layover on Navarro.
That's right.
You know
yeah.
what I mean? So
yeah.
assumedly Ahsoka's been gathering information for a bit, at least
Yeah.
the span of 2 episodes, you know, however long those take in reality.
Yeah. And so the Ahsoka actually says, well, then you know what I want. Again, suggesting that they have some kind of history.
Yes.
So then the magistrate's like, you'll learn nothing from me. And then she proceeds to march a prisoner up onto the wall, escorted by a pair of droids, and then proceeds to threaten Ahsoka by sort of dangling him and the other citizens of the city kind of as bargaining chips, where she's like, you know, these people mean nothing to me, and like how
many lives is
yeah,
worth to you?
The knowledge I have, 1, 10, 100. And I actually thought she was gonna murder that guy right there on the spot as like, I'm committed to my course. Are you?
Well, and she's like, you're going to cause so much suffering, or you just, by violating this treaty or whatever it is we have here, you've just caused so much suffering. And Ahsoka does this is another reason why I'm thinking she does the negotiate. She's, no, you're already causing suffering.
Yeah, they already suffer under your rule.
You've got a day.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing, eh? One day, you have one day to decide, and she walks away. So this is that, like,
AIDS.
This lends itself to my, like, this is a much more brutal, much more grizzled Ahsoka. Like, one day I'll be back.
She's channeling Anakin when he was leading Legion. You know, that bravado, that like that. There's a lot of Anakin in her.
Except she doesn't have a clone army to back her up this time.
There's a part where she smirks about.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
You know, it's like this whole. There's another line of dialogue, basically alluding to, if you don't, there'll be consequences. And I'm like, wow, that's so unlike her to make a threat like that. What consequences? Like, just that ambiguous consequences. And I mean,
on another note, I immediately noticed that the pacing and the way she was delivering the dialogue.
Yeah.
Her voice she's got it down an octave. Like, she's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's using the that we're accustomed to with Ashley Eckstein.
Yeah.
It's nice. She's doing a really good job.
That is one thing I picked up on immediately. I thought, oh, she's really got, it's Rosario Dawson, but she's really, and I don't want to say that she's doing an impression, because I think that's not what we're hearing and what we're seeing from this. It is a genuine portrayal, but
absolutely. She studied the character a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I really feel like there is
speaking in a higher register to be more in line with that, and then it's just the way she's delivering the lines, and there's a couple times in the episode where she just crosses her arms and does a little hip lean to the side, and I'm just like, yeah. Dave Filoni's directing this. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so she walks away into the fog, disappearing, and the title card rolls. So the next scene, we have the Razor Crest approaching Corvus. Mando says, I've picked up a beacon. I'm going to start the landing cycle. And meanwhile, the child is sitting there on his seat, eyeballing what I've come to call the shift knob.
Yeah, so he's on the console at first.
Yo, that's right.
Get down.
Go get in your chair.
He doesn't. He looks at go sit in the jump chair. We're going to start the landing approach.
Yeah.
But he doesn't right away. He goes, what did I just tell you? Go sit in your chair. And then the kid reluctantly does. And then he uses it, right? But so that didn't bother me at all the first time I watched it, but after watching it successive times, especially with Ahsoka's stuff that comes up, it recontextualizes it that, like, he is more headstrong than he should be. For me, a little bit, it recontextualizes that. Like, there's an element of something there that I think that we might get into.
There's definitely something there, and I think it lends itself to, you know, we spent an awful lot of time talking about where did we think he was intellectually, and maybe we were right, maybe we weren't.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It certainly recontextualizes some things.
It does. So having been told to get into his seat, he continues to stare at the knob, and finally he uses the Force and he takes it anyway. You know, when you tell a child that they can't have something and they do it anyway.
That's right.
Landing just outside the city, in the burned out forest, there's these creatures in the background, and they're eating the burned out tree trunks, and they've got this crazy, generic Star Wars creature sound, which I can't tell you what it is, but when you hear it, you're like, oh, I've heard that before.
Yeah, definitely. It reminded me of a Ronto. The head style is different, but in the same vein, sort of like a dinosaur, mammalian dinosaur.
I started looking up like dinosaurs in Star Wars, and I came across a piece of artwork, and I don't think it was a concept piece. It may have been just another interpretation, but it was like this really long-legged dewback, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of had a similar look.
Every planet we visit, and there's so many in Clone Wars.
Yeah.
We jump around so much, and they're pretty much all named, but it would be overwhelming to put them in a list. I'm sure somebody on Wikipedia has done it, but there's a beast or 2 or 3 or 5 or 100 on every planet, so it's quite possible.
The show does go out of its way to make sure that we get a look at, like, the flora and the fauna as if it was just, it's always been there. It's
background, it's environment.
Yeah.
That's the best thing about.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's that lived in, oh yeah, this is a real living and breathing place, right?
Certainly.
And one more thing to point there. There's a fantastic nod to A New Hope there when he's landing, as the soldier on the wall just scans him.
Oh, that's right.
Same way as they scan the Falcon coming in.
At the Masasi Temple.
Yeah.
That was in my notes. Yes.
The hand scanner, I guess?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
So look, it's a Razor Crest.
Yeah, so jumping off the ship, walking off the ship, Mando and the child depart for town, but not before Din Djarin's like, hey, give me that. And he takes he confiscates the knob and tucks it into his belt.
The knob.
Yeah.
Was it disconcerting to anyone else that he just left the ramp open? Maybe it closes on its own later. I don't know.
Yeah, well, they did the same thing in season 1.
They did, yeah. He left the ramp open quite a bit. Yeah,
Queel trying to get back.
Yeah, ramp all the time quickly.
I mean, it used certainly as a plot device. When you're really rooting for Queel to make it back when he's riding the blurg.
Yeah.
And you can see it. It's clearly wide open, right? You're like, oh, all he's got to do is get there and he can close the door.
Lauren, my wife, had a point the other day. It was, I guess last night. Where's the Boba Fett armor? Like, we could see right through the ship in the last episode. He gets sucked out into space, and I'm assuming he has it locked in a locker. And she's like, what locker would be in that thing? Like, after you could see clear through it. So
that's true.
Yeah.
There is that one compartment opens for the child to,
I was going to say, what about
maybe there's like
the berth or whatever
an
it
under
is,
the bed
maybe
drawer.
Could be.
If the bed, the quarters, I guess, the bunk, maybe, because it has a door.
Yeah.
Maybe it was okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Mando approaches the main gate and he encounters who we know to become is basically the captain of the guard, the Michael Biehn character, and he kind of starts this bluff by saying that he's been tracking for some time and is looking for a layover, to which Michael Biehn's character responds, nice armor.
Yeah, he gets basically the 3 same questions he gets from everybody he meets.
Yeah.
That's, are you a Mandalorian?
Yes.
Are you a bounty hunter?
Yeah.
Come on inside.
Oh, yeah, that whole bounty hunter? Yeah. Guild? Last time I checked.
Yeah.
And again, just that whole Western vibe.
Yes, totally.
Once again.
Totally. Yeah.
Almost like Michael Biehn, like later on, there's this exchange of dialogue between the two of them, and you really get this feeling like, are all the gunfighters in the Star Wars universe the same guy with a new skin?
Yeah, just grizzled.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I kept trying to look up his armor because it reminded me of something. Like, I looked up Dengar's armor.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's very reminiscent of that, but not quite. And started to think about going back through all the different armors that they have in Clone Wars, but because there's so many different factions and peoples that you meet, so it became overwhelming again. So I'm just going to say that his armor looked kind of hodge. I think he had a stormtrooper pauldron on one shoulder.
Yeah, maybe.
But it looked haphazard, but it looked so Star Wars.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
So inside the city, kind of similar to some of the other places we've seen, maybe like Navarro was kind of back in season 1, where there's like scant citizenry on the street and everybody's kind of, only this time, the citizens are like, they are way more cautious and they go out of their way to avoid Mando, to the point where he walks up to a street vendor to try and talk to her, and she like, oh, and I'm out, and turns to leave. And only does he finally get someone to address him, where there's the gentleman in the alleyway who is basically referred to as the craggy face man.
Like a lot of times.
Yeah.
In the descriptive.
Yeah, the craggy face man.
A lot of times.
Who he has a really interesting role throughout the whole episode, because he really, he's what, 2 spoken lines, but like he's a pretty interesting character. You know, he basically says to Mando, like, don't talk to us.
He's the face of the village. It's to give you you can't get into backstory and how the villagers are the poor and broken down and slaves and oppressed, but you can have that in one character and just show it on his face, show him old and beaten and weathered. So that's his role there. He's the face of that whole village. Yeah. And so that's why there's only just one character that he responds to and interacts. And we see at the end of the episode that they take that face of the village and move it way forward. Yeah, they do. In prominence, yeah.
Do we have a reference for him?
We do have a reference for him. He is played by Wing Tao Chow. And
is there anything we should know him from?
It's not particularly know him from, but he has an interesting connection in that he is a former Disney Imagineer.
Oh, cool.
And he was instrumental in Disney's expansion in China and Hong Kong.
Oh, wow. Cool. Yeah, that's super cool.
Heavy ties to the mouse.
Yeah. Nice. So speaking to the craggy face man, he says, I'm looking for someone. And, clearly fearful, he tells him, don't talk to me. Don't talk to anybody.
Yeah. Especially don't talk to the children. You're putting us in danger. And then we see that because then 2 guards show up immediately. Yeah. Tell him to go to the magistrate. And then the one guy just stares down Craggy.
Yeah.
Hard.
And he just kind of but did you notice like his reaction to that? Like
kowtow.
But it wasn't, I didn't get this vibe of like he was terrified. He just kind of like nodded and kind of averted his eyes like, okay.
Yeah.
And just kind
of almost like it's like a forced submission. Like I'll show you
exactly.
Because it's what it's expected.
Yeah. So approaching the inner gate, we start heading in towards that inner gate, and we see that there are some citizens who are being held prisoner on what I've called them, because I don't know what they are. I called them in like an electroshock tower.
Yeah, I think I had an electro cage.
Yeah. And at first I thought, they have to balance themselves there, and if they touch the bands, they get the shock, but the descriptive video said it just shocks them at intermittent periods. So yeah, who knows? But I did like the visual that I got from that with the
X-ray.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's like force lightning level electrocution, right?
Yes.
Yeah. As they're passing through the gate, you can hear one of the prisoners, and she's like, she'll kill us all.
Well, they beg him to save them.
Yeah.
They don't care who he is. They don't care who he is.
Yeah. So he passes through the inner gates. There's sort of an antechamber there, and then that opens up to this like lush garden with the pond and the bridge and the trees.
Even the air is clearer.
Yeah.
Did you notice that? I was presuming like some sort of like atmosphere scrubber right around
there.
Yeah. I kind of thought that there might even been a tinge of blue sky.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
And then we see the central structure there, and that's where I thought, oh, that reminds me of Jabba's palace, right? Only on a much smaller scale, right?
And you get that samurai or martial arts movie feel with the pond and the long bridge.
Yes.
And the sentry guard at the end, and everybody's sort of dressed in samurai style, multiple layers crossing over, just like, similar to the Jedi.
For you young kids, that means like a Kill Bill movie.
Yeah, there it is.
The first one, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So standing there on the bridge, feeding an unseen fish, is the magistrate, and her two droid guards stand behind her. So there's an interesting exchange here between the two of them. Oh, I guess we should introduce her, right?
We don't have her actual name yet, but we can introduce her, the actress. Diana Lee Inosanto.
Yeah.
And she is been in a ton of stuff as far as stunt work goes. She's very versed in all that.
Yes.
But an interesting tidbit, she is the daughter of Dan Inosanto, who was a training partner of Bruce Lee.
Oh,
Bruce
that's
Lee's
cool.
First student in North America, actually.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Actually really swing that spear around, guys.
Yeah. Okay. So
she's well suited for this.
It certainly looked credible to me.
Yeah. She even does, when she hands it over, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but she does these little hand flares.
Yeah.
This little like ceremonial stuff with her hands. It's very subtle, but as she's handing it to him, there's quite a bit going on with her hands.
Yeah. So again, going right back to what you said, Hank, about the same 3 questions, she questions him, "You Mandalorian?" And so she says that she's got a problem that's been plaguing her for a while, and basically says, I want to hire you to kill a Jedi.
And he kind of is like, you can't afford me.
Yeah, my price is steep. She's like, well, it's a task for which you're well suited to, and makes a reference to the Jedi being the historical enemy of the Mandalorian people. And he doesn't actually, he doesn't positively affirm, okay, I'll take the job.
No.
All he says is, where can I find this Jedi? Which is perfect because, hey, he's here to find the Jedi. So, hey, if I had someone that was just going to tell me where to go, perfect. I'll take your whatever and to my own purposes.
I kind of like the way he inspects the weapon, clangs it off your bracer, and you get this ping, and so that ping tells him it's Beskar. And the way she says, she rolls the R in Beskar.
Yeah.
And we actually, if you look back at the first episode, the thug in the bar that he beats up, he rolls his R.
Yeah.
Beskar.
Beskar.
Beskar. And so it's kind of neat, like that. Yeah. So I just thought that was cool, like an accent. A lot of people speak in Huttese and things of that nature.
Yeah. It's cool though that's how she wants to pay him though. She basically offers him this spear as a form of payment, stating that it's, it's pure Beskar, right? Like your armor.
Mm.
So that's kind of cool because again, this spear, it's going to come back in a major way towards the end of the episode, and there may actually be some foreshadowing with that. But we'll get to that when we get there. And of course, throughout the whole this whole encounter, the child, because he's still the child at this point, is kind of hunkered down on his like hip satchel, just kind of watching, right? So though all it is unspoken, Mando understands that Ahsoka is obviously the Jedi that, she wants him to kill. So leaving the city by foot, he's standing at the gates with Michael Baine's character, and he's about to leave, and the child starts like doing his little thing, right? And he just kind of looks over. What's that? And Mando's response, I thought it was pretty priceless. If you were, just kind of downplaying, he's like, I keep it around for luck. You're going to need it where you're headed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get another this is a long establishing shot of the depth and destruction to just how far the burn, I call it the burned out forest because I don't know what else to call it, but like it's miles in every direction. Like you were looking into the mountains and they are just barren.
Yeah, I was thinking too, because when you, again, on successive watches, as they're approaching the planet, you see rims of fire around like a large area of the planet. And you're wondering, I was thinking, are those like lava?
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing.
But then I thought, in terms of what we see there, those might be the edges of the fire
forest
still
fire.
Burning.
Yeah.
You can see them from space.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wonder if that's inspired by, the California wildfires.
Maybe.
It could be.
Yeah, really. So there's quite a bit of walking and just Mando making his way and kind of over rock and under branch and just making his way. And again, like it really gave me that No Man's Land vibe where it's like he's cautiously, like he's looking everywhere he steps, and finally he kind of gets to where he's going, and the camera pans up, and if you weren't paying attention, you may have missed it, but the owl sitting in the tree.
The owl.
Yeah. And apparently that owl's got a name, but I don't know it.
I don't know it either, but I have to deep dive on the owl there because it's super significant in terms of Ahsoka's character. So
exactly.
It's almost like her familiar.
Yeah.
And for the people who aren't familiar with the deeper lore or even with the stuff that went on in Clone Wars and Rebels, but it appears a lot when she appears, and it's sort of after a point in her life that's really important. But it's flying overhead while she's dueling Vader in Rebels. It's flying overhead of Vader when Vader discovers her discarded lightsaber.
Yeah.
In the last moments of the Clone Wars series, and most importantly, it's the familiar of the sister from Mortis, and you'll recall that Ahsoka dies in that episode. She dies in that episode, and the sister puts her life force into her and brings her back to life. And then the owl starts to follow Ahsoka.
Yeah,
Ahsoka.
That's right.
Is the sister.
Oh, right. Oh my God, I need to go back and watch that again.
Bro, it's so like this is why Filoni dropped that drawing of Ahsoka with Gandalf.
Yeah, Ahsoka the White.
Question mark, Ahsoka the White.
Yeah.
And another, like, this is a little deeper, sort of maybe reaching a little more, but Ezra pulls her through the portal from a world of another worlds.
Yeah.
She's been resurrected twice by the Force.
Yeah, really.
She is a bomb bad character.
Yeah.
Bomb bad.
Wow. Sorry, that just kind of threw me, because now I'm like really got to go back and rewatch those, because I was just like, yeah, I'm vaguely aware of that, but now it's like, oh, yeah. Hearing a noise rustling off to the side, the Mando sets the child down on a rock, and he sets out to investigate, but he doesn't get very far before he is set upon. And again, it's with this unbridled, like, she's fully invested. Like, there's no question that she's out to kill him
And end it
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
Any other character is dead in that first strike.
Well, this was my squeal like a kid moment. You know, we talk a lot about the West End games, the role-playing game, and some of the older lore. And we'd always ascribe to the notion that Mandalorian armor was lightsaber resistant.
That's right.
Turns out that's true. That's
Yes,
very
absolutely
true.
Very true.
Yeah. Barehanded takes her on, deflecting multiple blows from both of her sabers, like, and adeptly doing it.
Oh man, I can't say enough about this. It was like speed chess. The way that they so there's like three strikes and three parries that she attacks, and he's on the defensive, but he blocks 3 times. Then he launches his flamethrower, and she backflips out of it, and that's the a reverse attack and the reverse parry. And then he immediately hits her with the tether, and she immediately jumps over the branch and pulls him up, and he immediately, like, so everything is like a response action. It's like speed chess. They're like equally matched till they hit the ground. He's got the blaster on her. She's in her classic stance, like the Form 5 with the reversed saber.
With the short one reversed.
And he gives the line.
Yeah. He yells at her, you know, Ahsoka Tano, Bo-Katan sent me. And then she stops.
I need to talk to you.
Right. And she's like, I hope it's about him. And she just like totally looking right through him at the child sitting on the rock. Just one last point on that fight. I have to say, like, initially when I was going to lead off today's episode with my initial thoughts of Star Wars is better with lightsabers, which is true. But I have to say, this, to my way of thinking, this is bar none the best unarmed combat we've seen from the Mandalorian in the series.
Absolutely. This is everything the fight between Obi-Wan and Jango should have been in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
So yeah, fully canonizing the legends nature of Mandalorian armor being lightsaber resistant, which we always hoped it would be, and just
proof. Not proof.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not really a lot of exposition in that moment where the scene kind of shifts and it's later at night, and my God, I almost had this, like, it's almost like the you know when someone's expecting, you know, like expecting a baby, and then there's like the delivery room, and then the dad's outside pacing back and forth.
Yeah.
They got this, like, that's dad, you know, he's nervous, he doesn't know what to do, so he's just pacing back and forth. And then off in the background, we have this kind of like, this is where things start to shift a little bit for Ahsoka, where like she's obviously communing with him. There's no other way to describe that. I mean, without the descriptive video, it's like, oh, she is communing with him through the Force.
That's right.
So after the commune is over, you know, they share a moment where it's almost like there's an understanding there, because she has this like slight nod, she smiles, and then picks him up. And then they all come together to talk. And this is where we get our next big reveal of the series. And the child has a name. And she tells him, you know, that his name is Grogu. And at first I was like, that's dumb. But then I kind of, you know, it grew on me the more I watched it. And then we watched it again, and I'm like,
on me.
It did. It Grogu'd on me. It growed? Yeah. Oh,
it
bad
feels
jokes.
like a hut name. I can't remember what. I think it's Gorbo. I think the baby hut is Gorbo. I mean, I didn't look it up or anything, but it feels real close to that for me. It's alarmingly close to Goku.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I'm scared I'm going to actually call him Goku in the episode because I've talked about that quite a bit with my wife.
The people that I talked to last night, they were like, "Oh, so he's got a name," and I was like, "It sounds better when you add the word master to it."
Yeah, Master Grogu. But also, if you break it down, like in minutia, like we always crazy do,
And we will.
what grows out of goo?
Uh,
Clones.
oh, that's true. That's so true. But then we get this like crazy exposition piece where Ahsoka goes into like his origin, his history, because he's like, you can understand him, and she's like, in a way, yeah. But then
So
she goes into
material
this
plot
like,
lines.
you know, he was raised on Coruscant in the Jedi Temple during the Clone War, and then by the, you know, so that suggests that he was a Jedi initiate. Like we saw that scene in Attack of the Clones where Yoda has the scene of younglings, and they're all just kind of doing like really simple like lightsaber form practice.
When you're an initiate, before you're even a Padawan, you're like the younglings. They eventually get chosen by a
That's right.
master. Sometimes they're brought in by a specific master, and then they get first choice of that Padawan.
Yeah.
Essentially. And she says that he's been training with many Jedi masters for years.
Well,
So I mean, I did the math. I went back and did the math. So Anakin is 10 years old when he joins the Jedi Temple in
Yeah.
34 BBY.
yes.
The child is 7 years old at that point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't know if the child, like, so you could read it like he was raised at the temple as being he was maybe born there.
Yep.
But most of the children are brought to the temple upon being identified shortly after birth.
Right.
So we have to assume that him and Anakin were peers.
At some point, they could
Some
very
point.
well have been.
When Anakin is training as a Padawan under Obi-Wan in
Yeah.
Attack of the Clones, Grogu is 17 years old.
So Anakin is a special case though, because Anakin was never an initiate. He went right from joining the Order to having
Right.
to having a master and a Padawan,
master.
being a
That's
Padawan
true.
learner.
That's true. That's true. I'm going to say that they've definitely encountered one another, because it sort of matters about what she says.
It's completely
later on.
reasonable that they've crossed paths
'Cause I haven't-
somewhere.
yeah. And then he's 22 years old at the end of the Clone War,
Right.
right? So he's, he spent ostensibly 22 years with the Jedi. Quite a bit of that, maybe that first bit, was him not being able to process, like being so infantile that he couldn't, She says he studied for years. He's had more time since that.
Yeah.
So if we cut his life in half, he spent more time without the tutelage of Jedi than with the tutelage of Jedi.
Right.
And now he's using the Force instinctively. She says
Yeah.
that he hides it for protection.
Yep.
But we always see him use the Force for personal gain.
Yes. Personal
And
gain.
that is
Well, that's it.
an uneducated Force user's take, because without being constantly reminded
Yep.
that you shouldn't stray into the self-serving
That's right.
nature of the Force. So it really, really deepens him a lot for me, and
Yep.
it brings back that question of his alignment, because like she says, the most powerful thing there, she says, a fully trained Jedi can succumb to these emotions, and the best of us, and she's right there without saying his name. We
Yep.
all know she's talking about.
Of course,
Anakin
we know
Skywalker.
that for sure. I want to talk a bit more about the initiate thing, and this kind of goes back to that whole the minutia of what we've pulled out of other sources, and the role playing game again in its many forms. Like you said before, initiates would be identified, and Qui-Gon Jinn actually says it in the film that he would have been identified, and kids are essentially taken from their families shortly after birth if they are
Yes.
identified.
Yes.
So they go into this, we'll call it the initiate pool, because that's what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until they're selected. And some never get selected.
Right.
Some
Yeah.
never get selected. They never become Jedi, and they go off, and during the height of the Republic, the Jedi had several sub-organizations like the Agricultural Corps and
Yeah,
the Science
yeah.
Corps, and they would go off and do other...
Security forces.
Yeah,
and there was people that
right.
made lunches at the temple, and there was custodians, and there was all these low-level Force worker wielders that were in these positions of not customer service, but in like infrastructure.
Yeah.
The Jedi world was vast before.
So let's talk about his age a little bit again. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because there's a whole lot more to get through, but like we had sort of agreed that he was intellectually around 18 months. And I still think on some level that's true, but now you have this whole other layer, like you say, she's like she said that he's spent a lot of his life hiding his abilities in order to survive. But she also makes a statement about his memory goes dark.
Yeah.
Now, is she referring to dark as in like it's just he can't remember, or dark as in like the dark side?
So there's a couple of ways I've been thinking about this.
Yep.
I thought just this. She pauses after the word dark. So and then she says that he was hidden during Order 66.
Yeah, somebody had gotten him out of the temple.
Right. So, but it's two different parts. There's a pause there. There's a little long pause, like a beat. So she says he was hidden.
Yep.
And to me, that sounded like they were trying to protect him. But then she says someone took him from the temple, and that didn't seem like protection to me. And then after that, his memory goes dark.
Yeah.
To me, that sounded like somebody took him, and if darkness is taking him, that leads me to believe that he was in the possession of, if not Sidious himself, the Empire. There's also an option, like if we look at sort of Star Wars, like a place where we could turn the lights out and then turn them back on.
Yep.
He could have been in a carbon freezer stasis or something where he had no effective memories.
That's entirely possible.
My brain just starts racing with all these possibilities. But my leading possibility is that at that moment he was taken from the temple by the forces of darkness.
Interesting.
And some of the people in my little intermediate circle even think that he might have received some sort of, education in the dark side.
Yeah, that's not entirely. So I went the other way, and I started looking at. And I didn't look as deep as maybe I should have, and maybe will when we're done this conversation. But it's like, of the Jedi, the named Jedi that we know are canon, how many of them survived the Purge, and how many of them were on Coruscant when it happened?
Right.
That's a very short list.
It's a super
That
short
is a
list.
super short list. So the leading fan, well, not the leading, but a prominent fan theory that's been going around, and there's been sort of this fan campaign for it to happen, is what if Mace Windu survived? What if Mace Windu survived his encounter with the Emperor? And what if Mace Windu smuggled him out of the temple?
That's a good thought. We'd all love to see that. Sam Jackson has been leading the charge with I'd love to play Mace Windu again. Yeah. We know that we've seen Jedi certainly survive worse than Mace Windu got there. Certainly every other Jedi has a missing limb. And we've seen them fall from tremendous heights, land on their feet, and then take out a Star Destroyer.
That's right.
So it's a possibility. But at the same time, you could pick any random Jedi there and say, oh, they survived the Purge. And they, I think the Librarian is a good candidate.
That would be one of the leading ones, because she did survive the Purge, and she
Vader
was featured.
Kills her in the comic.
Yeah, she got featured a little bit later on, like you say, in the comic book. So
she has a cool weapon in the comic. She has a gun that fires lightsaber bolts.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool weapon.
Yeah. So I'm really curious to see if we're going to get any sort of callbacks to that as the series goes forward. Like, I definitely want to know more about his origins, but at the same time, going back to some of the things we've mentioned on previous episodes, it's like Yoda's species is probably the last great mystery in Star Wars that's never been unraveled, and part of me wants it to stay that way.
You could really link this to the Obi-Wan show by having the character that rescues him be Obi-Wan, and really start to weave the threads together.
Yeah.
Easily.
I love this scene in the sense that while she's going through all this exposition and telling us about his name and his origins, and she goes on to say, like, I've only ever known one other person of his species. And as she says that, a portion of Yoda's theme is woven into the score.
Absolutely.
And it's just so touching to hear, like, oh, that's really nice.
I forgot to, during the scene where she's
communing with him?
No, just confronting the magistrate.
Yeah.
She has a theme with Anakin.
Oh.
And the Anakin and her theme is playing while she's confronting the... there's a lot of John Williams music in this episode, actually.
Yeah.
The very end is a very prominent section of John Williams music. Although I think it's redone by Goranson, but yeah.
Okay,
yeah, Yoda's theme. Well, and then as you see the fan outcry about Yaddle being left out of the continuity.
Well, that's another thing that I read too. Like, this is more fan just like fan speculation where like people are still holding a candle for it could be their child.
Could be. There's a line by Pelly in season 1 where she says, if it ever pods or divides.
Yeah.
And then Lauren had said, perhaps it's like Gremlins, like Yoda just popped out a version of himself one day and said, well, I guess we got to train. Like maybe it happens to that species every 600 years. That's how maybe it's only one and they just keep popping. Like maybe he popped Yaddle out. She does die in Legends before Ahsoka is discovered by the Order.
Yeah, because she goes from being on the Jedi Council and the Phantom Menace to completely absent in the other 2 films.
That's what she dies.
Yeah.
She dies in the comics in between. It's not canon, but in between the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
She dies saving other Jedi in some heroic fashion.
Yeah. I think I read something to that effect too, where like her death was pretty epic when like very heroic.
Yeah, exactly. So if people are bitching about that, she's dead before Ahsoka could have known her. And so Ahsoka's talking about personal experience there. I only knew one of his species.
So there's a little more exposition about Mando going on about how my task was to bring him to a Jedi. And Ahsoka is very quick to point out, well, the Jedi Order is gone.
It's the first time that we've had the Force extrapolated on. A couple of times in the seasons, we've had people say, "May the Force be with you."
Yeah.
Mando never responded in kind because he doesn't know what the frig that means.
Yep.
But this is the first time when she even drops the Obi-Wan line. It's an energy field created by all living things. And
that's right.
She has her own spin on it, but this is the first time we've had the Force qualified for us.
Yeah.
And for therefore brand new listeners in the series. His powers are
that's right.
by the Force.
Yeah, we know it's the Force, but he doesn't, right? Like she even says, "Can he still wield the Force?" And he's like, "You mean his powers?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
These are magical wizards as far as
that's right. They're space sorcerers.
That's right.
So she's like, the whole thing, the Order is gone, and then he counters that. He's like, well, so is the Empire, but they still hunt him.
Very good.
So like
that gets her in the feelings too. She that does turn her introspective about the nature of the state of the galaxy right now.
It does, and I feel like again, going back to like this brutal character, brutal Ahsoka, as I'm sort of referring to her throughout the episode up until this point, we now see some of that, a little bit of that shift.
Certainly, she's softening a bit. It's a much more brutal world. I find her a lot more like Qui-Gon or Mace Windu than other, you know what I mean? Like the sort of the grayer.
I feel like she's on the edge.
Yeah.
I do feel like she's more
indicative of that.
Sorry, her cloak?
Her gray cloak.
Yeah, her gray cloak. Yeah. That's almost a little too on the nose, here, wear a gray cloak. But I'm going to poke a hole in that here in the next couple of minutes.
Okay.
So it's like he needs your help, and she finally acquiesces. She's like, okay, I'll test him in the morning. So I really love this next part where they find this portion of the forest that started to regrow. And I'm immediately like, oh, this is like our nod to Dagobah.
Yeah, 100%. Everything is covered in green moss. Yeah. Very alive. They push back the pea soup effect a little bit to give it a clear sort of atmosphere here. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Entering the mossy clearing similar to the clearing on Dagobah, Ahsoka conducts a simple test, levitating a rock to Grogu, and then asks him to send it back. And of course, I think this is where we get into that, going back to he's still a kid, and like he's just like, whether it's just the obstinance of like, no, I don't want to do it, or a genuine he doesn't understand, but she's already established that they can understand each other. So to me, this is him just as a kid, like, no, I don't want to listen to you. He's just being the bratty little kid and drops the rock.
It's right after she says that he's been protecting himself by hiding his abilities.
That's right.
He turns inward a little bit, almost as if that's kind of what makes him turn inward.
Well, and then
the fact that it's a defense mechanism.
Ahsoka has the Yoda line where she says, I sense much fear in you.
Yes.
He's hidden his abilities to survive. And so she's like,
very similar to Cal Kestis, because when we meet Cal Kestis in the Jedi Fallen Order game, he's been hiding his ability for years as well.
That's right. Although he was, in terms of training, he was much further along than Grogu is.
Agreed.
Interesting way, though, how the game, and this is just an aside to that, but as I'm looking at I've got a big poster for the game here in the studio, but the way that his force powers are unlocked through a series of
flashbacks,
memories and stuff. Yeah, really
Love
cool. Maybe we'll see something like that with Grogu as well.
Yeah,
where we
and
get
that game is very, very important towards the end of the episode. Actually,
yeah.
it's a big nod to that game.
So she says to Mando, "Come here," and she's like, we'll try it again, but we'll see if he'll do it for you." And he's like, "Okay." So picks up a rock and he's like, "Okay, kid." And she just kind of saddles around and she just looks up at him. Grogu. It's his name. Okay, Grogu. And as soon as he says it, he immediately the head snap. Abadoo. Where
And I feel like he says the word. I feel like he says it back to him.
You feel like he's parroting it back?
Yeah, like Grogu.
Yeah.
I can't even do it, but it's twice. He does it twice. It's the same sound, and it could be just a coup, but it's almost like a very quick and with his own accent. I don't know. Maybe I'm stretching.
It's definitely a recognition, like you're talking to me.
It's like when you say a dog's name, and you know a dog does not speak English.
They perk up though.
Whoa.
They just perk up, and the head snap, and you're talking to me.
Exactly.
So he's trying to get him to take the rock. He won't take the rock, and Mando kind of has almost like a frustration moment where he pitches the rock behind him. It's like, see, and she.
So I wonder where the kid learned that then.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I got that immediately. He went, he's frustrated. I'm not playing with this rock. I wonder where the kid got that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that, again, the whole psychology of learned behavior, right?
Exactly.
So she gently says, try to connect with him. And, I'm thinking, wow, she's going really meta on him, telling him to dig down like that. But his way of doing that is like, oh, wait, I conveniently have the shift knob in my belt.
So for me, there's a little beat before that.
Yeah.
Where I go, try to connect with him, and he just stares at the kid, and the kid stares at him.
Yeah.
And because we hang on the kid, and then there's a nod to what the Mando gives just a tiny nod.
Okay.
And it made me feel like the kid reached it. They connected through the Force, and the kid was like, "Give me the knob."
Maybe.
I really got the impression that they connected psychically, and that the kid communicated, "I'll do it for the knob," because he nods his head almost in recognition to what to staring in the child's eyes.
So what about?
Really got that impression.
Let's look at the other side of that coin. What if it was the kid looked at Mando and telepathically instructed him, "Give me the knob"?
Literally, that's almost
the mind trick.
That's almost the mind trick I was thinking. I honestly got that a little bit. I did, yes.
I don't think Din Djarin is a weak-minded individual.
No, but he's trying.
Yes, he's opening himself to the idea of,
right.
For sure.
And so instead of a mind trick, it's more like a communion where it's like, here's the knowledge you seek, and there's no, it's not like the torture Kylo Ren's pulling the information out of your brain. It's like an exchange. What's the information you're looking for? It's right on top. Here it is.
Ahsoka even sets the tone for that at the beginning of the scene by, kind of doing the little, let's see what knowledge is in that little brain of yours, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I totally buy into it. Either way, I just think the whole idea of, we've seen the child have capacity to do harm where he force chokes Kara.
That's
right. So all of the fan speculation that he may be like this character who's on the edge and that maybe he is acting a little bit more beyond his years, and it's an act for us as the viewer to maintain his anonymity in the galaxy. Maybe not.
Yeah, possible. If his powers are fading after having not used them for 30 years, he's friggin' powerful.
Well, yeah, that's where I'm at with it too. So there's I sense much fear in you. He's hidden his abilities to survive. We go through the test, and finally Ahsoka's like, I can't train him. And so this is where I said, hold on to that, because you're of the opinion that she's a Jedi again, and I am too. And this is where it becomes very apparent to me. Even though Ahsoka left the Order, she goes on to say the whole exposition about her understanding of what fear can do to a Jedi, to the best of us. Yes. That clear reference to Anakin Skywalker. Yes. And she's like, I'm not going to start him down that path where that can happen. So right off the bat, she's actually giving into her own fears. She's embraced her own fears, but she's embraced it from the pragmatic, dogmatic view of the Jedi that the dark side is evil. You can't go to the dark side. You can't be in the middle. So she still ascribes to the dogmatic practice of the Order by her refusal to train him.
So let's look for another character and recontextualize the sequels again.
Yeah, sure.
Luke Skywalker in a pinch.
She is?
The Jedi Order has to end. Yes, the Jedi Order has to end with her. I'm not going to train him, because I'm not going to subject the universe or the galaxy or another single living sentient being.
Oh, yeah.
To the temptation of the dark side.
Yeah.
The Jedi Order has to end with her.
Yeah.
The Jedi Order has to end with Luke Skywalker. It has to become something else.
It totally does.
What it was.
It totally does. And we're going to get to that in spades here coming up here fairly shortly. But I agree with you. And certainly the sequel trilogy tries to show us that there's an evolution there. You know, Rey in her Mary Sue-ness. I think they really tried with her and succeeded on some level. But again, going back to the Mandalorian as a recontextualization for the sequel trilogy, we're going to get to some stuff that really digs in on that.
For me, there's a little importance to the way that the child or Grogu takes the ball from Mando compared to the way that Ahsoka sends the rock to him.
Oh, there's a huge difference. Yeah,
with finesse and deliverance and gentleness and he without control.
Oh yeah.
And so control is important for the people that don't know the game very well. They break the game into force powers, into very confined sort of, and one of the most important ones, and the first one that you're supposed to learn is control. And so when he has impulse force abilities. He steals cookies.
Yeah.
In a moment, he could stop a
mudhorn,
or a mudhorn.
Yeah.
So he hasn't learned control, which is the first thing that a Padawan learns.
Yeah, I think on some level he I don't want to say operates, but when he uses the Force, it's almost always with an emotional context, right?
Yeah. And you could take it a step further, because even when he's healing people,
yeah,
it's self-serving because these people are keeping him safe, right?
Sure. Yeah, I think where it comes, like, with the whole relationship to the Mandalorian, like the whole choking out of Cara Dune was, you're hurting my dad, and
yes,
I need to protect my dad.
And exactly what Ahsoka says right here is he's formed an attachment.
Yep.
And that's going to cause anger and fear.
Yep.
And therefore I can't train him.
Right. So I just want to...
We've seen in Clone Wars an angry version of Yoda is a formidable beast.
Yeah. So I want to put this up against another character in Star Wars who maybe was in the same position and went the other way. And so... Right. I feel on some level, Ahsoka is actually showing the restraint that Obi-Wan should have shown when it came to training Luke. Whereas Obi-Wan threw caution to the wind and he took Luke under his wing. And he says later, he's like, I took it upon myself to train you as Yoda had trained me. And Obi-Wan admits his failure in that. Whereas Ahsoka is like, I have the wherewithal to know that I'm not the right person for this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Again, though, different motivations, right?
Yes, yeah, the same conclusion.
Yeah. So she ends the whole thing by saying that, it's better if he just lets his abilities fade.
Which is something I was aware could happen.
It
never occurred to me that your force abilities, just like, they talk about past life memories, and if they're a real thing, little children can experience them, and then as you get older, they fade away.
Yeah.
And so it kind of reminded me of that, and never ever occurred to me that using the force would be like using a muscle, and if you never did it, eventually you would lose muscle memory. Eventually you'd lose muscle mass. Eventually you wouldn't be able to perform that task again.
Oh, that makes sense. But then again, I never thought that, you could turn yourself off. I didn't realize it was a light switch that you could just go click.
Right. We do understand that, again, recontextualizing the sequels, we do understand that Luke physically cuts himself off from the Force.
That's what I mean. Like, I didn't think that was a thing either until we saw it in the movie. That's
right. Yeah.
Again, though, the role-playing games, which love to dig down on this stuff, though, like we talk about, how do Jedi stay hidden, and there's that Force ability where it's I can't remember what they call it in the game, but essentially allows a character to conceal their Force abilities,
cloak aura or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah. So I mean, the idea, it's not a new idea; it's just a different form, I guess.
That's right.
But Ahsoka at this point, she wants to turn her attention back to the task at hand, which is she gave the magistrate 1 day to make a decision. So she's decided, she asked Mando, did you see any prisoners? And
I was sent to kill you.
Oh, yes, I was sent to kill you. Well, did you see any prisoners? Yes, I saw some prisoners. We have to free them.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's good old Ahsoka.
Yeah.
That part is good old Ahsoka.
Absolutely. So then, true Star Wars fashion, it wouldn't be Star Wars without a double cross. Only this time it's our title hero who's going to double cross the magistrate. And,
fantastic line here too. Jedi teaming up with a Mandalorian. They'd never see it coming.
They'll never see it coming.
Fantastic line.
Yeah, and it's played very well too.
Yeah, they come up with a plan.
Yeah, as they're walking back into town, he starts basically giving her like a tactical briefing or like a
rundown of what he's encountered.
She says it's a small army of soldiers armed with A357 blaster rifles, a pair of HK-87 assassin droids
from Clone Wars,
and a hired gunfighter. He reads ex-military to me. Mm-hmm. The HK-87s I thought was a callback to Knights of the Old Republic. In the sense that HK-47, the playable droid character.
That's true. That's very true too.
Yeah. I just thought it was cool because HK, Hunter Killer, and they are assassin droids.
Absolutely.
The heads are a little different, but the bodies are very similar. So
very
cool
similar.
Little nod there.
Kind of neat that the droids had clothes on.
Yeah, very much so. But again, that whole, I don't want to say Japanese, but maybe that whole Japanese aesthetic.
Certainly a Japanese aesthetic.
Yeah, where there's like almost ceremonial garb, really. Mm-hmm. Only in this case, the droid is very functional, right?
I started to think too, because there's I don't know if I want to get into it now. There's a line coming up, but I started to think that there might be some significant to the color palette that the magistrate and her soldiers and her, especially the robots and the captain of the guard have, and that's that deep burgundy.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So then Mando's like, you wanted to say something, Manny?
I missed a beat earlier. I don't know if it's significant or not, but the droid, as Mando first walks into town, there's a really old droid who looks like a beat up old droid walking in the background.
We've seen him before. He's got oh my God, where do we see him? He's kind of white. He's got a long, narrow head. He almost looks like the guys from the banking clan or the.
He's on my screen. I can't.
Yeah, I can't think of.
I have all my screenshot on my computer is all, or my home screen or whatever it's called, is all the original Star Wars figures. I'm looking at him right now, but his name is so small I can't see it. It's not EV-99.
No, it's a white.
He's right beside EV-99.
It's a white droid.
Yeah.
Almost like very like humanoid featured face. Yeah, I can't remember what he is though.
He's the torture droid he's the one that pulls down the
that is EV-99. That's the.
Is that EV-99?
Yeah, we saw him as the bartender on Tatooine.
It's true.
Yeah.
I'm an expert and I can't get this guy's name out of my mouth. I'm disappointed.
Well, good listeners, if you know that,
you
know who that droid is, drop us a line because apparently we only know so much. What kind of review is this?
Sorry.
That's funny. So Mando remarks that even with your laser swords, you would not be able to protect yourself against that level of firepower. And then she says, true, but don't underestimate the magistrate either. Mando's like, well, who is she? Because she offered me a staff of pure Beskar to kill you. And now we get this exposition on who the magistrate really is. And she's a woman, Morgan Elsbeth, who is not a name that I'm familiar with in Star Wars.
No.
This is a new character as far as I'm aware.
Yes.
And Ahsoka goes on to tell her that Elspeth's people were massacred during the Clone Wars and she had survived, and turned her anger into industry by helping build the Imperial Star Fleet and plundering worlds in the process.
So I just had a thought here, and it might be just really reaching out for a Hail Mary in left field, but her people were massacred during the Clone Wars.
Yep.
We've already seen several times in this show people in burgundy robes being massacred during the Clone Wars. And I'm wondering if Morgan Elsbeth isn't part of Din Djarin's people.
That's entirely possible.
The very similar color pattern to those robes. And I'm like a huge stretch really, really early on. We're just throwing it out there in the pond now.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll get more on that. Well, it's because she's alive at the end of the episode. So
they never show her getting.
Oh, there's we got to talk about that too. Yeah,
I'm going out on a limb and saying she's alive. We don't hear the answer to the final question, but I suspect that she's alive, and I think that's. Oh, we got to keep you hanging, viewers. That's why that's the way why they played it that way, which is it's great television, right? It creates great drama,
and it's the first time they've done that.
Yeah, it is.
In 2 seasons, they haven't left any threads like that.
Yeah.
Like they've introduced like canonical threads and like dialogue threads, but they haven't actually wiped away from an important scene that you don't see in the background. That droid, by the way, folks, is 8D8.
8D8. Okay, perfect. And so Amanda's like, well, it looks like she's still in business, right? Judging by the surroundings. But that's a callback to talking about that factory at the beginning, right? So is Caledon, is it a shipbuilding?
Maybe just the latest in a long line of her settling down somewhere and stripping the place for what she needs.
Maybe. But certainly, I mean,
she just reaps worlds for the resources and then sells them to the highest bidder.
Is she selling them, or is she still in the shipbuilding business?
Well, it's possible. Certainly, recontextualizing everything. Certainly, the First Order, which grew from within the New Republic, had to get their ships somewhere. Yeah,
I'm going to talk more about that as we get towards the end of the episode, because I think that there is a connection there where she may still be actively in the shipbuilding business.
I agree.
Which could tie it to that whole line in Last Jedi, where Benicio del Toro is telling them, they don't give a crap who they sell to.
That's right. Yeah.
Let me learn you something big.
That's right. Yeah. So, got to rescue the prisoners. We're now coming back up to Corvus. The wall at the main gate is now manned by guards, and their attention is very focused on the outside. And we see Ahsoka singularly dash towards the gate while the soldier, like, it's her, sound the alarm. And then the rest of the guards start basically shooting indiscriminately into the woods. And then, like a streak of light, over the wall she comes, and she starts to clean house.
Single saber this time.
Yes. Yeah, so she cleans house in a kind of a really hyper-stylized way where, she takes out a few guys quickly, and then there's this moment where she uses the Force to rip one of the rifles away from a soldier and knocks another guy out with it, and then turns to face the guy that she just disarmed and gives him that, like, what are you going to do? And then he obviously runs, right?
She cuts the gong in half and the guy behind the gong in half.
Well, the guy, and I feel sorry for that guy. Like, I'm thinking of all the jobs that you've got to do in a private army. Like, the last job I want is gong ringer, because now
he's the trumpeter, right? He's the guy on the bugle.
Yeah, my only weapon is a drumstick. Do you know what I mean?
Take a swing at her with the gong.
He's got a mallet, and what's he gonna do, right? But he tries. Clearly unsuccessfully, and like you say, she cuts him down, and the tubular bell alarm in the process, and it rolls off the wall. It's very final too, like this will never ring again, like bong bong.
Yeah,
it's done. Like, there's no, when they were ringing it, how it had that like a bell, like bong, like the sustained note, and this was like bunk bunk, done.
Clunk clunk.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. It's a cool little, like, nod to, like, her reign is about to end.
Not a lot of nice filmmaking choices in terms of the direction here, because they make a human being move like an animated character, but by deftly cutting away from her leaps and stuff. And suddenly she's on top of a roof. Suddenly she's behind something. So they use, like, they clearly you don't want to use too much CG and have this character flipping all over and looking ridiculous. But the filmmaking techniques that Filoni uses here to give you the idea that Ahsoka is still the same crazy flipping mobile character that we've seen her be in 2 series, and it works so well, actually.
I really felt like this episode, this particular, and it plays out a little bit more, where there's that whole counter stalking through the city streets, and she's up on the rooftops, really was like, is this like him leaning back into his days on Avatar, on The Last Airbender, right?
Yeah, no, heavily.
Just like, again, going back to like the way that the characters move, and like you say, they move like an anime.
Oh, absolutely.
Or she does anyway.
Oh, certainly.
So yeah, she cuts down the last guard along with the bell. More guards now gather outside the inner gate along with Michael Biehn's guard captain, and the inner gates open and the magistrate and her droid guards step out into the street. Ahsoka at this point now at the opposite end of the street steps out in front of the bell, and they kind of face off against each other.
Super
and it's
Western style.
Yeah, it's this like kind of vibe, right?
Yeah, and the just the way her cloak moves, all these little things, like the way, like when you look at like samurai movies and kung fu movies, there's like these little aesthetic flares that they like focus on. They it's almost like the filmmaking language is different than Western filmmaking language.
I almost expected the camera to do like a tight shot on her face and then like super quick pan all the way back to the other end of the street.
Yeah, like a snap pan to her.
Yeah.
They're you know, in comic books as well, anime has a different like iconic language than Western comics. So that like different, like that tier that anime characters get means something different than a tier in a Western.
Right.
So just the little flares, the way that the cloaks all flow out, and just the tiniest things in this episode make me so happy.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah.
And there's another little detail there to just reinforce the state of the place. You see Craggy Face Man.
Yeah, the Craggy Face
peeking
Man.
out, but he physically has to pull that door shut. There's no power like you would have seen anywhere else.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even Anakin Skywalker on Tatooine, the slave quarters had like power doors.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, good point. So now Ahsoka starts to, I don't want to say casually, but she cautiously, slowly makes her way up the street and stops a few meters away, and she throws out Mando's mudhorn adorned shoulder pauldron as a gesture of, you know, your hired killer failed.
Oh yeah,
you know,
so good. I didn't see that coming, and
neither did I. Yeah, I thought it was the double cross.
Yeah, it was a nice. Just like, oh yeah, they've got a solid plan here.
Yeah, so tell me, or your bounty hunter failed. Tell me what I want to know. Where is your master? So now we know that we're going back to that. There's a bigger connection here somewhere.
There's always a bigger fish.
There is. At this point, Morgan instructs her forces to kill her. Blaster fire rings out, and Ahsoka leaps onto the rooftops, running away from the inner gate, deflecting a bunch of blaster bolts at the same time. Cool. Michael Biehn's character is carrying essentially the first. I don't think we've ever seen this on screen before. The first Star Wars shotgun.
Yeah, it's called a scatter gun.
Yeah, and
it's they have it in the Battlefront 2 video game.
Okay,
I couldn't tell you what it's called exactly, but it is a scatter gun, and it's like a close range shotgun weapon for it sprays like 5 or 6 bolts.
Yeah, because it clearly spit out a bunch of bolts in one shot.
It's deadly at short range.
But outside of a video game, have we seen that anywhere before?
No, definitely not.
I don't think so. So all the soldiers, except for 2, they take off and give chase, while the guard captain kind of turns to Morgan. He says, I'll take care of this. And she's like, okay, take the droids with you. So they go off. Those last 2 guards, though, that are sitting behind, Morgan gives them instructions to kill the prisoners and then go door to door. So she is a ruthless bee. Yeah,
and they Craggy Man they cut to his face at that, to bring that home again. He's the face of the village. So when they're reminded that they're going to go door to door, we humanize them again and go, uh-oh.
Yeah. So he steps out to try and make a save.
So now, he's like, he's the reluctant hero, right? He doesn't want to, but nobody else is going to, and he feels that he's got to do something. So opening his door and stepping out in the street like he's going to get between the helpless prisoners and the soldiers, he is he's kind of doesn't get the drop quite as quickly as our hero does, as Mando comes in on his jetpack and plants a drop kick right in Buddy's chest.
Yes. And
then quickly, with 2 very swift shots of his pistol, takes out the 2 guards, and then kind of spins thinking, Craggy Face Man is potentially another target, and then has that realization of like, oh, it's you. And they both have that nodding agreement, right? Like, oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they turn to free the prisoners. So meanwhile, we've got Ahsoka, who is clearly stalking the soldiers who are giving chase. Or sorry, the soldiers are stalking her, but they don't realize that she's counter stalking them.
Oh hell yeah!
Do you know what I mean? Like
Picking them off one at a time.
think there's another way to say that. You know, like they're methodically moving through the streets in a very like stalking kind of way, but she's clearly the one who's got the upper hand, or she thinks she's got the upper hand. Yes. So getting the drop on the guard captain, Ahsoka is able to disarm him, but then the 2 HK droids flank her, and they start laying down a hail of fire, which she can't. She knows that she's in the kill zone, so she makes an escape plan, cuts one of the droids down, and disappears off into the night again.
She does a little wall run to do it too.
Yeah, that was really cool too.
Yeah, real cool.
At this point, the guard captain, Michael Baine's character, he's recovered his weapon, and he orders the last droid to get up on the rooftops and to chase her down. And then you assume that's happening. There was a little bit of like, that's not a pacing issue at all, but it was like, I was having a hard time determining if everything was happening concurrently, or if we were like doing little time jumps where we were spending some time with Ahsoka and then going back to what Mando was doing, and then when he would catch up with her, we'd go back to her. But I kind of feel that it was more or less
happening all at the same time.
I think so.
Yeah.
Especially when we catch up to them both, and they're in the next scene where they're facing off against different opponents at the same time. You can hear their battles going on in the back, and so yeah, I definitely think it was congruent. Everybody catch the Loth cat creeping around?
Yes.
Yeah. Twice.
Nice to know that they're found throughout the galaxy now. Probably sneaking on ships and stuff.
Nice and deep.
Yeah.
You're listening to Fandom Power.
So we cut back to the main street of town as Mando is just like, he's telling Craggy Face Man, get everybody off the street. And so they take off, and man, like we go full circle back to the whole Western thing again. And we have this like, and I can't even tell you what movie they were trying to evoke. I know in season 1, essentially every episode mirrored a Western flick, and they named them. I don't know what they were referencing in this one, but it's very obviously Western in the sense that he's like, so you threw in with the Jedi. And he's like, well, it looks that way.
It's so good. She's standing on the wall, and it's just framed so well. Like, you can tell that an animator is directing this.
Yeah,
episode.
it's very much that way.
Standing up on the wall, and her cloak is billowing, and he's in the foreground, and just the soldier of the opponent, the shoulder sort of the opponent in the deep foreground. It's just framed so well.
Yeah.
There's a scene earlier on where she's sitting with the child, and the friggin' moon is in the background.
Oh,
and
yeah.
One dead tree is kind of framing them up and over and down. I'm going to paint it.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Beautiful scene.
So they're facing off on the main street, where at this point Ahsoka has now, I think she's sort of establishing that like, you can handle this. I mean, it's a completely silent thing, but it's like guard captain spots her. Now she's aware that he's aware of her, and she's clearly like, you got this, and then turns and drops off the wall on the other side of the courtyard, where now she is now facing off with Morgan. Really super, super cool. Like, going back to like, this is classic kung fu movie where they're squared off against each other on the bridge, and they just stare down each other like that. We are about to do combat.
Yeah, they approach each other really slowly.
Yeah.
And I must admit, I thought, well, this isn't going to go well for Morgan.
No, right? Because she's just standing there looking at the water.
Way better at combat than I anticipated.
Yeah, big time. They have this moment where it's the Obi-Wan Anakin movement where they simultaneously drop their cloaks to fight each other. So now Ahsoka with her twin lightsabers and Morgan with her the Beskar spear are about to face off. They each adopt a fighting pose, and then Morgan strikes first, and both spear and sabers clash. So some really cool, again, the fight choreography here is just fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
The way she clangs the spear, kapang, almost like it's almost
go bell.
Yeah, like pro sports, pro combat sports having a bell. It felt the same, very similar, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So the next few scenes kind of play off of each other. That's that simultaneous, like, and this is classic Star Wars, right? Like where you've got a land battle and a space battle at the same time.
And you keep cutting back and forth.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
it's quick. And we get back out onto the street, and the captain and Mando, they can hear the clashing, the ting, 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 and you hear the lightsaber humming, and he's like, who do you think's going to win? Could be your side, could be my side. So he doesn't even say a word. He just stares as the guard captain slowly kind of makes his way up,
but the whole time he's ready.
Yeah, he is. He's got the twitch, I guess.
He's ready to draw.
And that's where it cuts back to, like, any number of Clint Eastwood movies where it's like he's ready to go, like it's time. Kind of like the Marshal, the episode The Marshal.
Yes.
Same thing, right? That same, like, I'm ready. He doesn't have to say anything.
No. That's far enough.
Yeah. Both men listen intently to the fight raging inside the courtyard. As Michael Biehn approaches, he's like, I've got no quarrel with you, Mandalorian. And finally, Din's like, that's far enough. And he's like, don't come out anymore. So almost as if Mando is holding the captain at bay, to ensure that, like, I think Mando's, like, of the mindset is like, I'm out here to stop you from going in there and making it an unfair fight.
Exactly. No, that's exactly like he's the sentry now.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, back in the courtyard, we've got some more sword/spear play. And at some point during the fight, Morgan actually disarms Ahsoka of her long blade.
I was like, what?
Yeah. I
What?
didn't see that coming.
She fought Vader. What?
Yeah. But Andy, you had mentioned this on the way in today. Like,
yeah, there's a point there where it looks like she switches up forms.
Yeah.
And on Morgan's face, it's just like, oh, crap.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if she's actually shifting forms there from like form 5 to whatever, but it seems like Morgan just recognizes instantly she's screwed.
Yeah, as soon as she does disarm her, and perhaps even, like, because I was taking the character lightly, maybe that's what Ahsoka was doing too.
Yeah, maybe.
But because she does do that, like you say, Andy, she immediately, she has her Shinto, which is her short lightsaber, in her left hand, and she immediately switches it to the backhanded stance for, with the blade inverted along the back of her arm. So she switches forms, and that's when there's this look of like, uh-oh. And certainly the battle goes differently after that.
Which, by the way, if you watch any historical reenactment person who's versed in medieval combat will tell you, reverse grip in a sword fight is a bad idea.
Yeah, no doubt.
That is the fastest way to get yourself killed. But in Star Wars, it's fantastic. In the movie world, it looks cool.
It looks great, yeah.
So at this point, we flip back out to the outside where the dialogue continues, and he's like, you and I are a lot alike, willing to lay our lives down for the right cause. And then he says, it's kind of muffled, but I think he says, this isn't it.
Yeah, which this is not.
Yeah, this is not. This is not the right
that
cause.
Michael Biehn might have been drinking during the filming of this.
Well, I almost had this moment of like, is he going to flip? Is he just going to turn and walk away?
Is this the hired gun saying, no, I'm done?
Yeah, like, I didn't sign up for this shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that doesn't really happen because we flip back inside, and now Ahsoka has now pressed, the fight to the point where she rends the spear from Morgan's hands, and it's like saber to throat, and it's evocative of the, Bo-Katan and that Imperial officer on the bridge of the ship. And the fight is abruptly brought to an end. But not before we flip back outside, and it's like, oh, sounds like you win. And so the captain goes to lay his scattergun on the street, but he thinks, he can get the drop on Mando with the pistol concealed on the back of his belt. But Mando has him dead to rights puts him down with a single round to the chest.
Yeah.
And we get the final, there's a little flourish, like a little twirling flourish to drop his pistol back in, which is like, oh yeah, it's a Western.
Nice.
And then you get Craggy Face Man coming out for the, oh yeah, you won.
Yeah.
Only to have one more drop on him.
Yeah. There's this moment where they want to share, you feel like they're going to share share the victory, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, look out, as the final, the HK droid, which legitimately, because of the pacing and because of the action, I had forgotten about. And Mando turns adeptly and puts a round through his head.
Right between the eyes.
Yeah,
Boom.
it's perfect. It was just like, it was poetically beautiful.
Oh, man. And then we get the reveal.
Right. So meanwhile, back in the courtyard, Ahsoka lightsaber to Morgan's throat. Where is your master? And here's probably the biggest bomb drop of the episode. Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?
I stood up and went, wow. And at 4:00 in the morning,
Yeah.
I woke the people upstairs.
Yeah. I kind of was like, oh, didn't see that coming.
I did not see that coming.
I didn't see it coming, and I'm not 100% sure where it's going, but there's some serious speculation to be done.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not unaware of the character Grand Admiral Thrawn, he was introduced back in the 90s in that expanded universe trilogy, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. Timothy Zahn, who essentially launched, we've mentioned this before, Timothy Zahn, who essentially launched the expanded universe of novels. He's kind of like, I don't know, he's kind of like the godfather of Star Wars, really, in some ways.
The Heir to the Empire starts immediately after Return of the Jedi, with the consciousness of the Emperor floating through space.
Yeah. And so here's this character, Grand Admiral Thrawn, who in those days was a near-human admiral, a Grand Admiral. Near-human species is called the Chiss, and they're a race of blue-skinned near-humans from the unknown regions.
That's correct.
Yeah, from the unknown regions. Their culture is steeped in naval warfare.
Mm-hmm.
And he's written as this like master military planner. And that is probably the biggest aspect, that when they brought him back into the new canon in the Disney era, or not even the Disney era, for Star Wars Rebels, that is the singular most connective thing that they held on to, was like, he is a master planner. He's a master strategist. He's, talking about the chess game. He's the guy you don't want to be playing chess with. Exactly.
And he's so adept at knowing what you're going to do, and his tactics are so sound. And they also, it's introduced in the novels that he learns about cultures and enemies through their art.
That's right. Yeah.
And they keep that strongly in Rebels too, that he's learning all these things about Sabine and Kanan and Ezra and Ahsoka through the art. And they really keep that too. I'm super excited. See, one of the problems, and certainly Gideon is a great new villain, and the stakes are high because he has the dark saber, which without the dark saber, let's face it, he's just another guy in the background. He might be what we've been speculating, an Inquisitor. He could be some high level person assigned directly by the Emperor at his death to move the project forward. Yeah. But without the gravitas of the darksaber, he's ostensibly no one. But so the only super villain left, if you will, to step into that like someone that puts the stakes as high as Vader, or as high as the Emperor, or as high as the Grand Inquisitor, is Grand Admiral Thrawn. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, there's major implications with name dropping him. I mean, name dropping him all but, solidifies he's alive. There's no way that she would be name dropping him without, the knowledge that he's right. I don't think that they would name drop it without him being alive. No, exactly. If it's just the path to find Ezra. Well, but it opens up. Oh my God! It opens up the floodgates. If you haven't watched Rebels, and if you're only catching up on our show just now,
we talked about the exit of Grand Admiral Thrawn at the end of Rebels and how he left the series. He and Ezra on board the bridge of that Star Destroyer essentially hyper jump to God knows where with I don't know what they're called, the hyperspace whales.
Yes.
But you had pointed out, Hank, like the glass, the canopy, the bridge glass, it was exposed to the atmosphere. So like, how did they survive that? I mean, they went to hyperspace in the atmosphere of a planet.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like some creative way, whether we ever learn or not, and I guess it doesn't really matter in the whole space opera sense, he survived it. So the implication is very, very likely that so did Ezra.
So immediately for me, this what my first thought, beyond all the the obvious things, oh my God, Ezra, oh my God, Sabine, and oh my God, the whole Ghost crew essentially.
Yep. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, and I had joked about, hey, if you're gonna get the band back together, and it's like, holy shit, it kind of lends itself to this may be in fact exactly what they're doing.
My first thought was Ahsoka Tano spin-off show.
Oh,
because
yeah.
Just dropping Thrawn, also like leaving her where they leave her at the end of the episode leads me to believe like she's walking off into the sunset. We might not see her again contextualized.
I wondered that as well.
But certainly to hire such a big actress and to have put so much work in for her to only appear on screen for like 12 minutes, it seems like a lot.
At the same time, I felt the same way maybe about Bo-Katan, like we may not see her again either.
No, but now I feel like that there's a whole other side to this story.
Yeah.
and I think that might actually be happening. I think Thrawn was dropped not as an adversary for the bigger picture, because I think we have our adversary for the bigger picture in terms of the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
But I think that was dropping like an Ahsoka adversary.
Oh, that's entirely possible.
Ezra Bridger. And they've already sort of stated, Disney has said that we really want to go with the broad sort of spectrum Marvel style Netflix TV shows
interconnected.
And so, I think Lauren had said, I heard that there was going to be, and I was like, I don't think I ever heard that rumor, and I would love to hear that rumor, but I've heard every other single rumor about it.
Yeah, me too.
And haven't heard this one. And for it to be the one that could actually come out of the woodwork would make me so friggin' happy. Oh my God.
Yeah. I want to just shift gears for a second, and I just want to go back to the production side of things. And we talked about how, possibly Favreau's the showrunner, but he's got Filoni in his back pocket, and they have to be buds because of the way that this is being written. But after seeing this episode, you can't tell me that Filoni's not pulling more strings than we're actually aware of.
And it would be nothing for Favreau to continue with this and for Filoni to branch off into that, or for them to run in tandem. There is more here on Heaven and Earth Horatio going on. They have big plans, bro.
So let's come back to Thrawn for a minute, because I'm going to go a little further on this, and I'm gonna suggest maybe not if, I'm gonna say when, because I think that there's going to be a confrontation. When Thrawn makes his appearance back in live action, or his first live action appearance, I'm gonna speculate now, he is not part of the Empire. He has not established or reestablished any connection to the Empire. And I think there's some visual clues that suggest that. One, we know that Moff Gideon is our big bad. Even though it's the Imperial remnant, there's still a structure, and every Imperial villain that we've seen to date wears a uniform.
Yes.
Ahsoka refers to Thrawn as Morgan's master. So if we use the same convention, the bad guy convention, if Thrawn was still part of the Empire, would she not be a uniformed villain? Because to me, she just looks like a civilian.
Well, so if we dive into the fact that they've given us a little exposition on who she is.
Yeah.
Certainly Thrawn is crafty and powerful enough, especially in the novels.
Yeah, oh yeah.
To manipulate this person who ostensibly can build fleets of ships, to put them in a position where he's their overlord without having them be a member. She's outside the Empire. She's outside the Republic. She's an arms dealer ostensibly.
Well, there is a precedent for the uniform convention, and I don't want to harp on it because I like the idea that, you know, our opinions are varied on this, but like when the Empire basically nationalized Sinar fleet systems, they all wore uniforms. They all wore Imperial logos. Like they, you know what I mean? Like it certainly the executives did anyway.
No, that's very true.
So there's another aspect to this. What if Thrawn is just another player in the power vacuum created by the fall of the Empire? And now that he's come back, he's got this shipbuilder. And remember, the Chiss species have a huge naval history. What if he is building his own fleet to make a power play for himself with independent of any government or pseudo-government?
Well, certainly in the Thrawn novels, if you've read them.
Not the new ones, no.
Timothy Zahn novels that are like new canon.
I have not read the new ones.
He's essentially assigned by the Chiss ascendancy.
Yep.
To not infiltrate the Empire, but to join the Empire, and he's almost like an undercover operative.
Yeah.
And so in terms of that, you could be leaning into something very correct there.
Yeah. The other thing is he is, you know, using his time because everybody thinks he's dead, or the galaxy at large would think that he's dead, and the other players within the Imperial military would think he's dead. He's using this time possibly to get some ships, build up enough power base so that he can, in fact, come back and assert himself as the supreme military commander of the Remnant.
At the same time, I think we all want to see him in that white uniform when he appears.
I do too. I think that this adds a whole other layer. I'm just going to read it directly off my notes.
Sure.
I said, it wouldn't be a far stretch for a character like Thrawn, who has been written as a supreme military strategist, to make a play for a seat of power of his own design, or even set the stage for his return to power as the supreme military commander of the Remnant, potentially putting he and Moff Gideon at odds in the vein of the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Absolutely. There's a scene in one of the novels where him and Vader are teamed up, and they go down to a world, and it comes this situation where they lose all their troops, and they're together alone on a planet, and they have to survive together.
Yeah.
And during this interaction, Thrawn discovers that Vader is Anakin Skywalker, but nothing else than just
pure deduction.
Right. Like Sherlock Holmes is it.
He Columboed it.
Situation. He Columbos the frig out of it, and then internalizes that information.
Yeah.
Like that's a very powerful piece of.
Well, you would hold on to that because I mean, if you were to let that out, I mean, there's serious.
Vader would kill you.
Yeah, really. Ask Prince Shizor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you go up against Vader, you better be able to play hardball.
This is it.
Right. So, any more we want to say about Thrawn before we move on?
Blown away. I told you earlier before the show.
Yeah.
My friend that I couldn't tell Colin at work at the beginning of the show, I mentioned him that I couldn't say the word about the show to him. He's such a big fan.
Right.
He texted me right after. It was like 6:00, an hour after we were done work. He drove home and watched the episode already, and told me that his 10-year-old son cheered like he won the Stanley Cup when they said Thrawn's name. And I was just like, for me, a 10-year-old, like, it made me so happy.
Right.
Like almost more than being an adult and getting to experience this stuff. It made me happy that there's somebody that young that's experiencing it like you and I did.
Oh,
and
yeah.
For me, that was really powerful.
Oh, that's great. So, and again, here we go. It happens for the first time in Star Wars history. We get this classic use of the wipe shot, but it's like Morgan doesn't get the chance, or we as the audience are not afforded the opportunity to hear what the answer is, if in fact there's an answer at all. We don't know if Ahsoka just murdered her. Like, did Ahsoka get what she was after? Is she now is Morgan a prisoner now? We don't know.
Well, certainly there's a new magistrate in town. Magistrate
absolutely. Craggy. Yeah. Craggy. Hey, Raggy.
So, and we do get that in Star Wars before, but it's usually a line of exposition.
Yeah.
As Kanata uses it, that's a story for
another time
regarding Luke Skywalker's lightsaber,
right,
and how she came into possession with it.
Yep.
So there is that we're going to take this information and put it in our belt and hold it, and we've got it. So maybe we'll return to it someday.
Yep.
For me, that was a big part of saying there's going to be an Ahsoka Tano show, and that this is going to be developed further in that. But this could be a Game of Thrones style show that we're heading into, where there are many, many moving parts.
Yeah, for sure.
We might need to make the seasons longer.
But again, again, it is called The Mandalorian. So if he has to be center to everything, and if he's not, then it's not his show anymore. So
no, exactly. And we are starting to steer into the lore.
That's right.
That is definitely pulling us hither and thither, if you will. In terms of staying focused on him.
I love the idea that the series may be working towards the Rebels resolution that we never got, that Ezra does get to come home. And I think that is going to play into where the show is going in the next 3 episodes. But I am totally, you want to do an Ahsoka spinoff? You want to do a Thrawn spinoff? Oh yeah, I'm in. Just give it to me.
I'm all in.
Right, so the main gates open and Mando and Ahsoka walk out. Behind them, the citizens of Corvus are celebrating the overthrowing of Morgan, and the craggy-faced man is symbolically draped in her cloak, signifying that he is now the magistrate. And I kind of wonder, like, given his reluctance, like the reluctant hero thing that we were talking about before, is there a possibility that he may have been a legitimate government official at one point and now has been restored?
That was displaced by her arrival.
Yeah.
He certainly has some ownership over what's going on there and some investment into it. And he's the focal point of the casual or human face, if you will. Human seems, in terms of Star Wars, it seems like a silly thing to say, but the human face of the village, right?
Yeah, of course.
Also in this scene, this is, again, John Williams music. They play a version of the theme from the celebration at the end of Phantom Menace, the Naboo song.
Oh, yeah.
That's playing as they're celebrating.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Ahsoka offers Mando the Beskar spear. She's like, I believe this was payment. And he's like, I can't accept it. I didn't finish the job.
He's so noble to a fault when it comes to his job.
But taking a page from the client's book, talking about Beskar and how, she echoes, but it really does belong with, a Mandalorian. So he accepts that. And like this, symbolically, you can't tell me that is not placed in his hands specifically as a way to combat whoever is wielding the Darksaber.
No, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
He can do so much with his, barehanded, gauntlet deflections. But I mean, to have something that, is potentially.
When we talked about the need for an adversary to have, like, we were like, well, Sabine still got Ezra's lightsaber, and
that's right,
if Ahsoka shows up, she's got lightsabers, so that makes sense. But now there's something that evens the playing ground.
That's right. We got a Beskar spear that we know is just as lightsaber proof as Beskar armor. So we're looking at a big showdown coming here at some point.
Absolutely.
But she says, "Where's your little friend?" And he's like, "Oh, he's back at the ship. I'll go get him." And isn't there this, like, I don't want to say dejected, but it's almost sorrowful, like Mando is resigned to the fact that he's about to say goodbye to his little buddy, his ward, ostensibly his son, and he's not dealing with it very well. Like he's genuinely sad about it. Yeah.
This is where I nearly broke down, actually, in the scene when he tries to wake him up to say goodbye.
Oh my God.
Too tired to wake up. Like the kid doesn't understand the gravity of the situation.
No.
So he just fades back off to sleep, and it really.
You get from the hammock to the way the scene shifts, and now he's cradling him like an infant. In his lap.
Yeah.
And it's this, like, as a parent, I'm immediately like, I'm welling up, like, oh my God, having to say goodbye to a child is just, it's a terrible feeling, like I can't, I've never experienced that sense of loss quite that way, but I've experienced loss in other ways where I feel like, oh yeah, it's a heart, it pulls at the strings, like huge.
Yeah, I don't know if you in a normal situation, if you would ever get the opportunity to say goodbye, if in a situation where, you know what I mean?
Yeah, in the
Where you
whole
would, yeah, like in a world where accidents happen or where situations in life happen, you might not get that moment where you get to look into the child's eyes and know that that's the last moment you're going to look at them. Ostensibly,
Yeah.
you should look at your child every moment like that's
like it's the last.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think not having that moment can affect you. So that, like, super powerful. I thought that, and I don't know why, because I knew that the show hinged on their relationship together.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I thought he's going to give the child up, and we're going on a whole other trajectory here.
We've said it before, I mean, this is more than the lone wolf and cub thing. This is a genuine, like, if you were on the fence before now as to the nature of the relationship, I don't think there's really any denying that he's fully made the transition from surrogate protector to father.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and even if they do find someone else to train him, I kind of get the impression that maybe he's going to haphazardly try to teach him the Force.
I have some thoughts on that as well that I'm going to get into in our next big what if section, which is coming up here shortly. Because
yes,
speaking of what if, I had a terrible take on that whole scene.
Oh yeah,
as he's like, "Wait here, I'll go get him."
Yeah,
I thought for sure he was going to get back to the ship and find that because of the tracking beacon that had been installed previous episode, he would get there and find nothing.
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that, because it never even occurred to me that they are being tracked now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think we'll get to Tython next episode. I think that we'll encounter the Empire remnant before that, because they are being tracked.
Yeah, so more speculation to make. I love it.
Buddy.
I love it. I get the sense that the scene in the Razor Crest, in the back of the Razor Crest, happens over some time. Like you say, he's sleeping and Mando is reluctant to like wake him up. But he does, and the reason I say that some time has passed is because Ahsoka, as far as I'm concerned, has,
gotten impatient.
Yeah, I'm not waiting anymore. Yeah. So she's walked out to meet them.
That's
and
right.
From the back of the crest, she's like, you're like a father to him. And she says it right on the nose. You're like a father to him. And I cannot train him.
No.
And Din's like, but you made a promise and I held up my end.
Right. Word is everything to this character.
That's right.
Word is everything to this character.
Yeah, yeah. But she has another idea. She says there is one possibility. And here it comes the we're going to go deep here shortly, but she says go to the planet Tython. There you will find the ruins of a temple that has a strong connection to the Force. Place Grogu on the Seeing Stone at the top of the mountain. He says, then what? Then Grogu can choose his path. If he reaches out through the Force, there's a chance that a Jedi may sense his presence and come searching for him. Then again, there aren't many Jedi left. With that, Mando thanks Ahsoka, and she bids him a "May the Force be with you," and turns to walk back towards the city. Roll credits.
Oh my God.
So, the implication of taking this kid to the planet Tython.
Wow. Yeah, if you don't know Star Wars the way Wes and I do and Andy does, oh my goodness. This literally is ground zero for Star Wars in the EU.
Yeah.
Ground zero. Yeah, I don't even know where to begin.
I want to touch a little bit more on Ahsoka, and like I'd said, like her characterization throughout the episode was mostly not bitter, but what was the word I was using? She's kind of dark and she's like grizzled, right? But I really now at the end of this episode get the sense that, there's a spark of the old Ahsoka. The young, optimistic Ahsoka is now starting to shine through.
Oh, and maybe the central theme in all of the movies, all of the books, all of the shows, cartoons included, is hope.
Exactly. Yeah, you nailed it right there.
This is hope for her, and it's very telling that she says there's not many left. That means that through the Force, she understands that there are people left, and
for sure.
I think what a powerful set of circumstances. The idea that she can connect with the child of her former master.
Yeah.
Really tickles my fancy. I want to be a fly on the wall during a conversation between Luke and Ahsoka. And I have this book, and it's not canon by any means, although part of it has been canonized by Rian Johnson because he used one of the abilities, force projection, in Last Jedi. That's in this book called the Path of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And it's essentially, I don't know if you've read it, but it's a handbook for a Padawan.
Right.
And this particular copy of the book has been passed down from way from Yoda to Dooku to Qui-Gon.
Is this one of the books that was written for like the YA audience? Like,
it's not. It's I guess so, but it's like a blow by blow. It's like, here's the history of the Jedi Order.
Gotcha. Okay.
Here are all the lightsaber forms you're going to learn. Yeah. Here are all the powers that you can experience. Here's why to stay away from the dark side.
Yeah.
And then the cool thing about it is that there are handwritten notes, and they're not by they're printed in the book.
Yes.
This copy of the book was passed down from Yoda to Dooku, from Dooku to Qui-Gon, Qui-Gon to Obi-Wan, from Obi-Wan to Anakin, from Anakin to Ahsoka. From Ahsoka, it got into the position of Sidious because there's notes from Sidious in there.
Oh.
And at some point, Luke Skywalker gets a hold of it.
Oh, that's really cool.
And so there's all these notes where they're examining each other's thoughts and different interpretations of Force abilities and things. It's actually a really deep dive into Jedi lore.
Well, I like the idea of the book, and I'm going to touch on the books a little bit more, particularly the ancient Jedi texts that are now in possession of Rey.
Yeah, and one of the covers of that book, the one with the Jedi, sort of the Phoenix and the lightsaber, the old Jedi Order symbol, from the EU, is on the cover of the one that they feature prominently.
Oh, right.
In The Last Jedi.
Cool.
So I'll friggin' mail it to you if I have to.
So there were a couple things that I meant to look up yesterday and I didn't, but the one thing that I did get back to was I did kind of look at Tython a little bit closer, and the more I read and the more I remembered, the more I was getting excited, and I couldn't turn it off. Like, it was just such a, like, I ended up doing another like page and a half of notes just to make sure that I sort of had everything out that I wanted to say. But if you're not familiar with Tython, at least in the canon sense, because there's a lot of cross-pollination, kind of crossover between the EU and the canon. But originally, Tython was introduced back in 2007 in the Legends, the Darth Bane novel. And then it made its first canonical appearance in the 2016 Force Awakens RPG. And then I guess the first time you really see it is in the 2019 Dr. Aphra comic book.
Yes, that's where I'm. Other than the EU references, that's where I pick up sort of familiarity.
Did you read Dr. Aphra, didn't you?
Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit about like the context of Tython in that comic book?
So they don't really contextualize the planet other than to say that it's ancient in terms of its power, and that the Jedi Order may or may not have originated there. Yeah. But what they do get into is that there's a temple there. Aphra, as a character, if you're not familiar with her, is ostensibly
she's the child of a.
She's Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
She's the Indiana Jones character of the Star Wars world.
Okay.
And Vader hires her early on to try to track down like Luke Skywalker. He hires a lot of people. Yeah. And they form this relationship, and you get to know that she's not an Imperial agent. She has friends inside the Rebel Alliance, and so she takes Vader to Tython because she is trying to hide the rebels on Hoth.
Right.
That's where the comic sort of centers around that story. So there's not a terrible amount of exposition about Tython, other than that we get to see it. We get to see the temple in the comic. I could send you some screenshots. I'll get them out. There's a part in the there's a part of the past that we're attached to here. And the comics do that a lot. We go to a lot of different temples. We go to a lot of different planets that have ties to, and it's spoken in the same breath as Jeddah. Yeah. It's spoken in the same breath as the Yavin Prime.
So in the reading that I did in reference to Tython, it made reference to, canonically speaking, that Tython, the temple that's there, is akin to the ancient temple on Ahch-To.
Exactly.
That they are of similar lineage or age.
That's
and then they
right.
go on to say there's another one too, right?
It definitely falls right into the EU information that we have.
Yeah.
And the EU information goes back, and they make a point of starting the Star Wars lore, if you will, at about 34,000 BBY. BBY, for everybody who's not informed, is before the Battle of Yavin. So that's the destruction of the first Death Star.
That's right.
They go 34,000 years before that into their world, and then they make a point of saying that originally this planet was settled tens of thousands of years before that.
That's right.
And that it was this planet that was like essentially the living embodiment of the Force. Think like Ego from the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
And that when it sensed a Force-sensitive being on its surface, it would tear itself to pieces. There would be crazy Force storms, and when there was an imbalance in the Force between light and dark, the cataclysms would occur. It would rip itself to pieces. We get to see that on Mortis. We get to see that in the world beyond worlds, that there's this whole other element to the Force where like planets can almost be sentient beings.
So the line in the episode where Ahsoka tells Mando to place Grogu on the Seeing Stone, there's a reference to Tython about there being a structure like a megalith, and they describe it as being made of pure kyberite. Now, do we think this is the same thing? Is the Seeing Stone, in fact, the same structure? Do we think it's the same thing?
How extensively did you play Fallen Order?
So I played Fallen Order right. I played the campaign front to back. It's been a while.
So they have Seeing Stones in. He finds every time he finds a place that he can sit and meditate.
Right.
Interface with that.
Right.
Those are Seeing Stones.
Okay.
Scattered all over Jedi temples, all over the galaxy.
Right.
But the deep tie to canon now is the planet Bogdan that he goes to.
Yeah.
To search out the Jedi temple on Bogdan.
Oh, Bogdan. Yeah,
Bogdan is a moon of Tython. There are two moons of Tython, Ashla and Bogdan. And this is where we get the origins of the light and dark side of the Force, because the original Force wielders that inhabited this planet 40,000 years before the Battle of Yavin basically took the light moon and the dark moon, and it's like much like a pagan religion or native, and then ascribed light and dark characteristics. So you almost have them inventing the Force as nature,
right? Or
having it revealed to them through these moons, right? And you also get the sister and the brother,
right?
And we go back into Dave Filoni, and we go back into the Avatar. And if you know anything about Avatar, the Avatar is the moon.
Yeah.
Right. So it really begins to tie a lot of things. Even there, it has so many connotations. But we do extensively explore Bogdan in the Jedi Order game.
Yeah.
And there is a Jedi temple there as well. They talk about in the old lore. You might have encountered this when you were doing your research yesterday. There's 9 Jedi temples on Tython. There's the original one on the top of the mountain that, assumedly, that's the one we're going to visit, where that she wants the Grogu to go to. But the 8 directions from that mountain, people went out with different versions of what they thought the Force were.
Right.
And they built temples based on those beliefs. So there are sort of 9 different versions of the Force.
Yeah.
And we get a cataclysm at some point there, where there's a war between Force users who are split on an opinion. Think like Christianity splitting on Before they're called the Jedi. The people are called the Jedi.
The Jedi,
right. So to change it, there's an apostrophe and 2 eyes.
Yeah.
But from that, what they call the Force Wars, and we're talking 40,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, they split off into 2 groups, and they. One becomes the Jedi Order with one singular eye, and the other become the Sith.
Yeah.
And then non-Force users can't even be on this planet because it wants to tear them to pieces.
Right.
It's super dangerous for non-Force users. So the non-Force user natives to this planet, they literally colonize the other 9 planets in the system.
Yeah, right.
It's like deep Star Wars lore. It's the first galactic expansion. Everything starts on Tython. Like the first, they're called the Gree, are the very first galactic traveling species that we're aware of.
Yeah.
In all of the whatever galaxy Star Wars takes place in, and they're the original. They go to Tython and discover it, and yeah, cool, crazy cool stuff. It couldn't be more ground zero in terms of the origins of the Jedi.
It's and quite literally
Star Wars itself.
Quite literally ground zero, because in both EU and canon, it's a deep core world. So like, as you said, the likelihood of getting intercepted by the Empire before we get there is super, super high, as we've got to basically we're out in the Outer Rim somewhere.
If we track anywhere along the EU at all, if we're using any of the EU stuff that is to do with Tython, the hyperlane coordinates were removed or destroyed 900 years before the Battle of Yavin. Ostensibly, nobody knows where it is, even if Cal Kestis can get to Bogdan.
So I know it's semantics, really, but I think it's Bogan.
Bogan? Oh, maybe.
It's Bogan. It's Ashla and Bogan.
Okay, good. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And so I'm gonna bring this full circle. I'm gonna bring it back to like how that aspect of Legends, and I appreciate the depth of knowledge that you bring to it, because I didn't know the specifics of that, but what I discovered and what I did know was there's a canon reference to Ashla and Bogan. There is already a canon reference to it, and if you aren't aware of it, it's right here.
Ah, you heard my call. Good. Your imbalance woke me from a deep slumber.
Imbalance?
Your presence is like a violent storm in this quiet world.
You're a Force wielder. But you're not a Jedi.
Wielder? Jedi and Sith wield the Ashlar and Bogan, the light and the dark. I'm the one in the middle, the Bendu. What do you call yourself?
I am Kanan Jarrus, Jedi Knight.
You carry conflict with you, Kanan Jarrus, Jedi Knight?
It's this.
Ah, interesting.
Careful, it's dangerous.
How so?
It's a Sith holocron, a source of evil. My student's been using it, and I'm afraid it's changing him.
An object cannot make you good or evil. The temptation of power, forbidden knowledge, even the desire to do good can lead some down that path. But only you can change yourself.
And there it is.
Ah, yeah, we've been to...
So...
That's Tython.
That is Star Wars Rebels season 4, season 5, I believe. And that's Kanan.
Congratulations, Wes.
Kanan Jarrus speaking to the Bendu. So I just want to sort of tie it all together now, because that to me was the biggest. As soon as when I read Ashla and Bogan and the reference to Tython, I'm like, we've heard that before. And I knew that season of Rebels, I felt like that was an unfinished, like it was a dangling thread. It's like, they're really going to be working. We've had Gray Jedi in the expanded universe, or I know that's the name we've given them, Gray Jedi.
Yeah.
They've been sort of prolific throughout the EU as long as the EU has existed, these other Force-using traditions. But I thought, on the nose, we're going to get there. And again, this is where I say they tried to do it with Rey, but I don't know if that it was conveyed visually to us as the viewer as good as it could have been done. And so Rebels drops this huge we're going to explore that, and then they never do. The series ends and we never hear anything about the Bendu again. So going back to what you said about the precursor to the modern Jedi Order, this early Force using tradition, the Jedi, is the Bendu a Jedi?
Wow.
Is he steeped in that pre-Jedi philosophy of balance between the light and the dark?
I got to look it up again, but there's Bendu references in the Old Republic stuff.
Yeah, so
I have to check it out in terms of that. what you just said completely recontextualizes that episode, and I had forgotten that he used the terms of Ashla and Bogon to represent the ability to wield dark or light side of the Force. But now that you say that, because that planet is never named,
right?
That is the planet Tython. He's at the very beginning of that. Bendu says, "Your presence here has created a Force storm."
Yeah. So
they're all wow.
As you had said in Star Wars Legends, those early Jedi who would drift too close to the light, or Ashla, they would be sent to the moon of Bogan to meditate there on the dark moon. And those who drifted too far to the dark side would get sent to Ashla to meditate on the light, to maintain the balance. So to me, this really, I'm reading directly from my notes here, because if I don't, I'm going to forget where I'm going with this. But it very much solidifies the idea that the Jedi and the Sith do in fact share a common origin, and that the Bendu may very well have been an in-canon representation of the Legends Jedi. I think that this revelation really connects the dots to the sequel trilogy. And I say that if we go back to The Last Jedi, if we go to the temple on Ahch-To and we take a really good look. For those of you who are listening, if you're following along here and you're near your computer, I want you to pull up an image of the tile mosaic on the floor of the temple.
The Proto-Jedi.
Yeah, so when you...
For a long time after Last Jedi, it was my screensaver.
Yeah, so looking at that image and you see that seated figure, cross-legged, sitting down, half of it is light, half of it is dark. But if you notice, beside the figure are round objects. And on the light side of the figure, there's a dark circle. And on the dark side of the figure, there's a light circle. Are those the moons, Ashla and Bogan?
Oh, 100%. I got the yin yang out of that immediately. He's holding a saber. The saber split opposite colors.
Right
in front of him. I studied the crap out of that thing. The idea that they were giving me an in-canon First Jedi Temple. I paused the crap out of that movie when I had it digitally and looked at everything I could look at. I tried to look at those books so hard. Just wanting to know stuff about Jedi. I've always been obsessed with that, and the fact that we're getting there is just amazing.
It kind of dovetails nicely into the sense that, when Luke took Rey up there and sat her down on the stone and got her to meditate, and there was that moment where he's in a freaking panic and he's fearful because she went right to the dark side.
Yeah.
But she comes out of it. Look at the way she comes out of it, though. It's almost like, what? Like, it's nothing. And there's that, they really played Rey up to be this, like, she's the middle. She's essentially, the
balance.
The balance. And so if we take it even a little bit further, I know they're referred to as the ancient Jedi text, the books, but are these books maybe more akin to the philosophical teachings of the precursor order, the Jedi order? And they are in fact more in line with the earliest Force traditions?
I'd have to go back and find the source material rather than just brushing it up on Wiki and stuff. To actually read the novels and comics. But the Jedi Order and the Sith Order are established like 20,000 years before the Jedi. I mean, they both originate there.
Yeah.
But I think that they had expanded out of the galaxy before that schism.
Okay.
I think they are not out of the galaxy, but they certainly had colonized the 9 worlds.
Yeah.
In the Tython system.
Yeah.
Certainly built temples all over the system. Might be the origins of where you get like non-Force wielding beings having like a religious connection to the Force.
Yeah.
There's so much just that one planet drop. I mean, they certainly know how to cook stew, these guys, man. Holy cow.
So again, going back to that, pulling these parts of the EU and bringing them forward and recanonizing or recontextualizing by recanonizing, like this is one of the deepest cuts I think we've seen yet.
Yes.
We thought there was a lot of connective tissue in the last couple of episodes, like we'd said affectionately that the one episode leaned into the past and then the next episode leaned into the future. Mm-hmm. And this episode just continues that, that connective thread of weaving everything together.
If all the other episodes were sinew, this episode is DNA.
Oh my God. Yeah. So what does that mean for Grogu? So I really think that, you say that maybe Mando will try to train him. I think we're going to get there. We're going to get to Tython. We're going to put him up on the Seeing Stone and basically turn on the Force radio and send out a ping, ding, and somebody's going to come.
Yes.
Maybe it won't be a Jedi. Maybe it'll be somebody like the Bendu. Maybe this offers another option, the middle option, where, Grogu is left to develop on his own independently and can be the middle ground. And he can still hang out with Mando and still go on adventures, but still develop as a Force user.
And that's the whole idea, is that beyond Jedi, and that's the whole meaning of dropping Tython. I believe firmly the whole idea that there can be Force wielders who don't ascribe to the traditions. Windu said perfectly in that clip you played. That's just a reference to the wielders of the Ashla and the Bogon. That has nothing to do with the Force.
Yeah, he's just like, I'm the thing in the middle.
This whole reality beyond that. And you really get into that in the World Between Worlds. You really get into that in the late Clone Wars episodes, where the representatives of the Wills show Yoda his dark side and let him commune with Qui-Gon. Yeah, they just we're in the Marianas Trench. They drop us so deep into Star Wars. It's hard to express to people who aren't as steeped into it, if you're just a casual viewer, how deep they've just gone. I think we're at Star Wars bedrock.
We've opened a door that we've never, we've spoken metaphorically about opening doors and stuff, with Cara Dune, having the metal dropped on her and all you do is step through the door. Here's another door open in the larger sense, that where we now have the ability to introduce new characters in new ways that turn the classic cinematic tropes of Star Wars kind of on their ear. But I also, again, this lends itself to, do we think someone's going to show up when he sits on the stone?
A live action Bendu makes me just shiver right now.
I think I would love to see something like that. I think the more, and again, this is just the structure of the storytelling and the way that it's been going. My instinct is to lean into, we're going to get Ezra Bridger is going to come back and he'll factor into it somehow. But I mean, what about other characters that could potentially, could respond to that?
Certainly the most powerful user, as far as we're led to believe, that Luke Skywalker is the most powerful Force user available.
Skywalker twins, yeah.
Right, and I think that if anybody were to get a ping off this guy, would be a burgeoning Jedi Master Luke Skywalker, who's currently occupying himself with rebuilding a Jedi Order and therefore looking for Force pings in the universe, if you will. I think in the comics, he even acquires a holocron.
Okay.
The holocron that it's like a register of Force users in the galaxy, and it's what the Emperor was using to track down children.
Right.
And so I think he actually gets in possession of that post Return of the Jedi, and then is able to cherry pick some children.
Yeah.
But I think that Ezra Bridger, in terms of who's telling the story and who the supporting cast are, is a much more astute choice.
Yep.
We don't have to use de-aging tech. We don't have to replace Mark Hamill.
No.
We don't have to replace Carrie Fisher. We don't have to invent somebody brand new. We don't have a live action face for that. It could literally be anybody that just sort of is a good actor and suits the need. I strongly feel that it'll be Ezra Bridger that shows up to look for him.
I agree with you.
I think you're going to get a very similar formula, and because it's still okay to be formulaic TV and still give us these kinds of reveals.
Yeah.
But I think you will find, I'm still going to stick to the fact that there's a tracking beacon, that the child is going to be removed from the possession of the Mandalorian, that they're going to have to operate from a point of defense rather than offense. And now we have a bigger cavalcade of characters to align ourselves against Moff Gideon.
Yep.
And I think you might see Ahsoka Tano and Bo-Katan in the finale of this episode.
Well, this is what I was saying before about getting the band back together. And I think collectively we've made solid arguments for why these characters could come back, why why we should see Bo-Katan again, because she's got a vested interest in restoring Mandalore. She needs the Darksaber to do it. Now we have a vested interest in seeing, with Thrawn being introduced, we have a vested interest in Tano, Ahsoka Tano, in whatever resolution needs to happen there. And we'd already argued, with Gideon being an ISB officer, that there's a play to bring back Kallus. And if you're going to bring back Kallus, why not bring back Zeb and, hitherto reunite the Ghost crew, or what's left of the Ghost crew. And if that culminates in, like, I could see that as being like a season finale, like that there's resolution to Thrawn is finally defeated. Thrawn and or Gideon are all defeated. We get the final resolution. Ezra gets to come home. We know what happens to everybody. And then we don't have to see those characters again. And we can start next season anew with something else, a new arc.
It's true. I don't know if all those threads are too powerful to tie up.
In 3 episodes, I would say that it is. But I think over the course of, if we don't... how much resolution do I think we're going to get in 3 episodes? I don't know. I think, what's going to happen. If I really had to say that, I do think we're on a collision course to get everybody back together. And I'm going to leave it at maybe the finale is a confrontation of sorts between Gideon and Thrawn, because that would be a good cliffhanger ending.
That's kind of neat. I think maybe you'll get that lightsaber Beskar spear fight that you want.
I think so too.
But I think that I strongly feel that the larger threads that have been dangled in this episode, I think Thrawn and Tython, although plot beats for this, I think you're going to get an Ahsoka Tano show. I know that Dave Filoni's attention will be split shortly as they're developing a Bad Batch animated series,
which I am completely, I won't say I'm opposed to it, but I'm not thrilled.
I like it. I don't know how much more you can tell about those
I'm not
guys.
thrilled. And I say that only from the point of they went through the motions to canonize the clones from the Republic Commando video game, which in my mind, that is the original Bad Batch. They were the specialized, I don't mean to go down this path, but you've already, within the canon, you've got your frontline troops. You've already shown us, a plethora of specialized soldiers, culminating with the ARC Trooper, Rex and Wolf and all those guys who are ARC Troopers, advanced recon clones, right?
That's right.
These guys are elite soldiers. Well, you went and you did it a step further, and you brought the guys from Republic Commando in because Rex couldn't handle a job.
Yeah, it's
why isn't the guy like Scorch and Fixer and the other 2 guys, why are they not? They should get more, to my way of thinking. They were first. They deserve more screen time than the Bad Batch.
No, agreed. And then with them immediately putting out 2 of the figures in 6-inch when 1,000 other Clone Wars figures should come first.
Yeah,
lets me believe that this is just a sell.
Well, it's got to tie into the marketing somehow.
And there's still that. There's still all that dirty. We're loving this, right? We love it.
I know.
Almost lets us put up this cone of silence around us to pretend that an evil corporation isn't funding this stuff we love so much. But at the end of the day,
course not.
They want our friggin' money.
They do.
Yeah, and they're gonna get it too, bastards.
So I had one other thought, and it was sort of like a, when you're going down a particular train of thought and you have that, that shiny thing, and you kind of, I'm gonna go over here for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about characters like that could potentially come back in that gray zone now, where light and dark is clearly no longer definitive. And another character in Star Wars lore that didn't get any resolution that I think deserves some and has the potential to show up as a Force user. What about Kira from Solo?
Oh, maybe.
Kira left. The last time we saw her, she was now the overboss of the Crimson Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
So she's working directly for Darth Maul. Is there a chance that Darth Maul trained her a little bit more than we saw?
It's possible. I know that they were definitely hoping to get more out of Solo in terms of longevity before they switched gears to TV. And I have heard the rumor of them continuing that story in terms of a Lando Calrissian show.
Yeah.
That would, so possibly.
I mean, Star Wars, the common
is Asajj Ventress dead canon?
Not sure. I'd have to double check on that. I thought she just kind of like stopped.
There's a novel with her and forgive me, Quinlan Vos.
Yes.
Where they team up. It's a young adult novel, but it's post Clone Wars. And they team up to do so. I haven't read it. I've just read a synopsis. So.
I mean, as far as Star Wars is concerned, where redemption is the redemption arc, it's a classic Star Wars, right? I mean, it's, redemption for Anakin, redemption for Luke, or, and now redemption for, like, it is redemption for Ben.
For the Queen of
Ben
Frozen.
Solo. Yes, for the Queen of Frozen. But when you talk about this, and this is the last point I'm going to make before I wrap it, was in this new understanding that we now have with the Ashla and the Bogan, when to me it changes Ben Solo's redemption arc, because to me Ben Solo did not redeem himself, and he did not die a Jedi. He died as a middle guy, and Rey already is a middle guy. Rey just brought him back to the middle.
That's an interesting interpretation.
Yeah.
It's interesting. She,
when
she kills Palpatine.
Yeah.
She absorbs all the Sith at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the idea was that before she realized she was all the Jedi.
Yeah.
The goal was to have Palpatine, for her to kill Palpatine. All the Sith would go into her.
That's right.
Including him.
That's
and
right.
He would take over as the dominant force in her consciousness.
Right.
But she already opened her heart to all the Jedi. So
yep.
I think that when she, they don't really focus on it, but when she kills Palpatine,
yeah,
it's exactly what he wanted, but there's a significant thing that happens before that, and that's that she realizes that she's all the Jedi. And so when she also becomes all the Sith.
Right.
But also for me, moving forward in that, with her being the center, it troubles me in terms of we're not going to get the classic good light, dark. Like, how we talked about early on, it's the best example that we have of cut and dry, light versus dark.
Yep.
Good versus evil, right versus wrong.
That's right.
That you could almost teach a child morality with it.
That's right.
And so that it troubles me that we're going to have to invent something as and this is where the Yuuzhan Vong came from. That right?
the overt simplification will no longer
bad guy
be there.
Now that we've tamed the Sith, and it's just like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Right.
And we already accept that the Sith and the Jedi are these two moving parts of a yin yang that trade power back and forth.
Yeah.
For hundreds of thousands of years, ostensibly.
Well, maybe the gray people are, even fewer than, maybe there's some consequence to staying in the middle, where I don't know, maybe it's I
like the idea
my
that
head
there's
is just
higher
swimming.
there's the higher morality that plays out by the middle, by the Bendu, where he's above what goes on between light and dark, but also the recognizing that because there needs to be a balance, the balance is the object.
Yeah.
I just think it takes away from by actually having the universe or the galaxy balanced, the force balanced perfectly.
Right.
It would be a very boring story to tell, because everything would be honky-dory all the time, and we would just watch Jedi levitate things and feed the poor, which was great. I want that, right?
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be fun to watch.
No, it wouldn't. Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything that I wanted to touch on today. I don't think there's much left for me to talk about. You guys have any closing thoughts before we call it a day?
I think you're going to get intercepted on the way to Tython by the Remnant.
Yeah, I mean, formulaically, it just works with the way the show's been going.
Exactly. We have 3 episodes left. I think you'll see, in terms of storytelling beats, I think you'll see the Mando take a loss, and I think you'll have to see him spend an episode recovering from that loss or gathering the troops, and then I think you'll see an assault on the base, if you will.
Yeah.
They're going to raid the Death Star to recover the child in the finale.
Oh, like we've already established, like this episode really, like that downtrodden, he's so sad at the thought of leaving the child. What better way to create drama than to have the child abducted and have to pull off a rescue?
It's his only kryptonite. Other than that, he's undefeatable. We see he doesn't give a fuck, right? Ooh.
No.
He's undefeatable. Losing the child is his kryptonite, literally green.
Yep. Yeah, it really is. Andy, you got anything to add?
That's pretty much the same mindset I'm at right now.
Yeah. So
best episode ever.
We keep saying that too, right? Like it just,
yes, we do.
It keeps,
yes,
but it does.
Do.
But if you keep giving me more and more every episode, then I am going to keep coming back to that conclusion. Especially when
it's so big, I can't even believe what could be next.
Yeah,
Python is so big, it's crazy.
I don't think we've had a deeper cut on the show yet, and I would be hard pressed. Like, if you're doing that, what else are you going to do? Like, can you go bigger than that?
How do you top that in a finale that's 3 episodes away?
I know.
I'm freaking out.
I'm super, super keen to speculate on what the runtimes are going to be of the next 3 episodes, if they're going to stick to that 35 to 45, or if we're going to get like a longer finale or longer episodes leading up to it.
They released all the air dates of these yet? Is there going to be a gap between the 7th and 8th episode?
I sure hope not. I guess I haven't looked at the calendar to see when they fall. Let me just pull up my calendar here.
If they do a gap, maybe we should do an episode where we just get our feet.
Yeah, really. So we had one yesterday, the 27th. We'd have an episode on the 4th. And then we'd have the 11th and the 18th, if there's no gap, should be the finale of 18th of December.
That's right.
Yeah. So over before Christmas.
Yeah.
And to me, I would prefer that. I don't give me a break for Christmas. Just give it to me.
No.
Yeah. So hopefully no gaps.
Toys.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen. Well, that's it for me.
Amazing.
And I don't think I could. If I keep talking anymore, my head will explode because I'm just so full of like, where is this going? But thanks for sticking with us. I hope you guys are going to come back for the next 3 episodes. Again, if you guys have got your own theories and your own speculations that you want to bounce off us, would love to entertain those. You can reach out to us through our Facebook page, on our Twitter, and you can get us fandompower3 at gmail.com. So love to hear from you guys. And until next week, may the Force be with you.
And also with you.
And this is the way.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to Fandom Power. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll be talking about another one of your favorite fandoms. Fandom Power is a Sawcast production.